All right, I have 6 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. We're going to start off with, since we have so many new people here, we're going to go around the room and do some introductions. So I'll go ahead and start. I'm Mayor Candace Soulsby.
I'm Linda Yellen.
Councilman Greg Irvin.
Dennis Prochko.
Councillor Alex Dreer.
Gary Manley.
Yeah, John Stinnett, Ward 2.
Charlene Sales.
Chalice Savage, Councillor.
Amanda Gilbert.
Thank Mary Day, Councilor.
Richard Myers, City Manager.
Bert Likens, Finance Director.
Danny Soulsby.
Mike Fleck, Councilor.
Charles McLean.
Okay, do we need to do a roll call after that, Richard? Okay, so recorder, please call the roll.
Amanda Gilbert.
Here.
Danny Soulsby.
Here.
Charlene Sales.
Here.
Dennis.
Yes.
Gary Manley.
Here.
Charles McLean.
Here.
Linda Yellen.
Here.
Councillor Irvin.
Here.
Councillor Fleck.
Here.
Councillor Savage.
Here.
Councillor Dreer.
Present.
Councillor Meriday.
Here.
Councillor Stinnett.
Here.
And Mayor Soulsby.
Here. All right, so moving on to the election of Budget Committee officers. Last year, Amanda Gilbert was the vice chair and Councilor Mary Day was the secretary. Do we want to go ahead and have a motion?
I will move that we have Amanda as our chair and Dana as our vice chair.
Second. We have a motion with the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I will go ahead and turn this meeting over to, go
We
ahead.
need to get a secretary.
Oh, and we need a secretary. So, do you have any motions for a secretary?
I move that.
What does that mean?
Councilor Stinnett would be.
I don't even have a pen.
I think you just signed.
Minutes.
Yeah.
Typically, it alternates, so it's
Move through to.
You would,
committee member, counselor, committee member, counselor. So the secretary would typically be a committee member instead of a counselor this time. So, but unless you want to go.
I was a committee member last year.
Be secretary.
That was okay, because
do we have a second?
I could amend my motion
Okay.
to keep with tradition. If you're not, it wouldn't be an offense. For Dennis to be the secretary.
I can't write very well.
It's okay.
Gotta give John Hancock.
I will second that.
We have a motion with the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, now over to our new chair, Amanda Gilbert.
The minutes from the May 10th budget meeting. The chair recognizes Councillor Meriday.
Yes, I just wanted to speak to the minutes if that's allowed. Because I reviewed them and I was reminded last year that we went through the whole budget and then we kind of got to the end and I was very surprised that there were some objections to items in the budget that we didn't discuss when we covered those items in the process of reviewing the budget. I would hope that we can, if there are objections or questions on items in the budget, that we could discuss that they're presented in the budget.
I would just say, though, if you do get to the end of the budget and you do have a question or an objection, not to feel like you can't say something. You can until it's.
So do we have a motion?
To approve the minutes as presented.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Next is the budget committee member declarations.
Person,
Yes.
I'd like to declare a potential conflict of interest in sharing that I work for as a line item in the community promotions part of the budget, and if that item comes, I will recuse myself from any discussion or vote on it.
I also and
Madam Chair, I'll need to declare I work for South Lane Wheels and they're listed in the community promotions budget.
May I just request that people speak up? I have real difficulty hearing. Thank you.
Carrie, will you be recusing yourself? I didn't get that part. If you
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Any other declarations? Okay. All right, well, we can move on to receive the proposed budget from city manager.
You have a copy of the proposed budget, and I'll take this time to read the budget message as a part of that process. Dear Mayor, City Council, and Budget Committee, attached is the 2023-24 proposed budget for your consideration. As always, the purpose of this budget message is to introduce the proposed budget, provide some background information, and supply a brief overview of the document. I welcome a much more detailed discussion as the Budget Committee reviews the entire document. Well, we have seen some slight relief from the issues previously mentioned in last year's budget. We continue to be plagued by the nationwide issues of high inflation, employee shortages, supply chain challenges, product and material shortages, and product and material shortages. Because of failures by the state and federal government to address the complex issues of substance abuse, housing, and mental illness, local communities are being forced to face those issues too. All of these issues have a profound impact on the quality of life of all members of our community. This proposed 2023-24 budget attempts to address the issues on a local level to relieve some of the impact. We continue to push for assistance from the state and federal government to take steps to resolve the issues and provide resources for us to meet the needs of all our citizens. The 2023-24 proposed budget for the city of Cottage Grove is, as required by Oregon law, a balanced budget. Expenditures for all funds total $51,351,401, an increase of $5,212,922 from the 2022-23 adopted budget. After removing the major grant projects and the financing for the wastewater treatment plant upgrades, the total proposed budget would be $41,502,234. We will be quite busy with grant projects and wastewater upgrades for the next 2 years. The city's permanent rate continues to be 7.2087 per thousand of assessed value. This proposed budget was prepared using the city's full permanent levy amount. The city may levy less than the full rate without jeopardizing future opportunities to levy the full rate. However, the revenue that could be generated cannot be recovered in a future year. The proposed full levy is estimated to generate $5,660,000 of collectible tax revenue, $360,000 more than the budgeted property tax revenue in 2022-23. The proposed budget includes a special revenue fund, a new special revenue fund to account for the funding for the Economic Development Administration, the EDA grants for Main Street and Bohemia Park. With the grants crossing over multiple budget years and extra reporting requirements, we felt it would be beneficial to account for the revenues and expenditures in a dedicated fund. Street fund status. The staff has been discussing the conditions of the street fund with the council for years. Last year, staff reviewed the condition of our roads and the ability of the current revenue sources to keep up. At a recent conference, the deputy director of Oregon Department of Transportation stated, the gas tax is dead. Because of increased fuel economy and the electric vehicles, the gas tax cannot be a dependable funding source for street improvements. Gas tax revenue has continued to decline and has not kept up with the increasing costs for street maintenance and construction. After designating the funds for the EDA Main Street grant match, there are insufficient funds to do any substantial improvement projects on streets. We may be able to do some chip sealing work, and we can talk about that as we get to the street fund with Faye Stewart. In July, the city received an updated pavement condition index, PCI, for all city streets. In 3 years, the PCI had declined 3.3% from 58 to 54.7, dropping the overall PCI from the low fare category into the poor category. The report also provided data that in order to maintain the current PCI, the city would need to spend at least $1.5 million a year in street capital preservation and maintenance projects. To move the PCI to 70, a good category, a yearly investment of 2.5 to 3 million would need to be done or would be required. Street improvement costs continue to increase as rates higher than inflation. We have 6 major projects that we have on the shelf ready to proceed if funding is available. The costs for the projects have increased an average of 65% in the last year. The cost of concrete and asphalt has nearly doubled. Additionally, the state and federal standards for improvements have tightened and become more expensive to comply with. Court cases against ODOT and the City of Bend have dictated that expensive sidewalks improvements have to be made when street work is done. The City Council at their last meeting created the Street Improvement Funding Ad Hoc Committee to help them walk through this complex issue. The committee will begin meeting later this month to discuss and explore options and create a plan to fund street improvements. They are charged with providing a recommendation to the City Council by August 14, 2020. Following the recommendation, the Council will pursue the implementation of the plan. Whatever the recommendations, the Council will be faced with significant budget modifications during the 2023-24 budget year. Personnel. We will be operating under the second year of our collective bargaining agreements with all 3 of the bargaining units. Employees of all 3 bargaining units will receive a 5% cost of living allowance pursuant to their respective CBA. The 2023-24 proposed budget includes a 5% COLA cost of living allowance for non-represented employees to maintain parity. Currently, the city is conducting a compensation study for non-represented employees to evaluate their compensation package and to make sure that it remains comparable to other communities. After the analysis is complete, adjustments to non-represented employee compensation may be necessary and would be done during the budget year. Bargaining unit employee compensation was evaluated last year as a part of the collective bargaining process. Unavoidable costs continue to have a major impact on increases in personnel expenditures. The public employee retirement system significantly increased rates on average of just over 5%. We're about 30% of payroll is the cost for PERS. Training costs are also putting a major burden on operations. The new commercial driver's license CDL requirements are requiring additional training and certification costing at least $7,500 for each new license. This is a huge expense for operating our public works department. Utilities. In accordance with the utility 5-year financial plan, last year the city water and storm drain utilities had no increase, and the wastewater rates had a 12% increase. The year prior, it was also a 0 increase for water and storm. The economic conditions of the past year have escalated costs associated with the operations of the utility funds. During the 2022-23 fiscal year, FCS Group, our consultant that prepares the 5-year financial plan, evaluated the plan and recommended modifications to the plan. We will be bringing the modified financial plan to the City Council for approval. The review indicated that the rates as proposed in the plan for wastewater and storm drain would remain as prepared in the plan, with wastewater in 2023-24 being 12%, in 2024-25, 3%, and then in 25-26 being 0%, and the storm drain remaining at 0 for the next 3 years. That's the remainder of the 5-year plan. The rates for the water utility were originally proposed to have no increase for the remaining 3 years. The analysis indicates that water utility rates will need to increase 6% in 23-24 and 24-25, and with no increase in the final year of the plan. The proposed revised 5-year financial plan was used to prepare the rates for this proposed budget. The table below compares the current rates with the proposed rates to begin July 1, 2023. The proposed rates result in a $13.65 monthly increase for residential users using 5,000 gallons of water with a typically sized meter, a 10.65% increase for the total utility bill. The total increase will vary based on meter size, consumption, and type of use. We have compared golf course rates. The 2023-24 proposed budget includes a 20% rate increase at the Middlefield Golf Course. The proposed rates still keep the course competitive with other courses. We will also be considering rate increases for the use of the Cottage Grove Armory to address the costs and the increased use and services. We will be reviewing all of the fees in the comprehensive fee schedule to make sure they are relevant and cover costs that are not reflected in the proposed budget. Currently in our comprehensive fee schedule, we have a fee for public records on VHS tape. And that's probably not something we need right now, but we don't have a fee for providing public records on a jump drive. So we need to fix that and bring it modern. We were thinking of taping the jump drive on a VHS and charging the VHS price, but we figured that wouldn't work. During the year, the City Council may review and adjust the fees or other charges. This proposed budget was not prepared relying on any of the other increased revenues from these other fees. There is nothing secret about this budget, and we want to make this $51 million budget as easy as possible to understand. If you have any questions, please feel free to call me or the finance director. We will get you answers or ask them tonight. Please also feel free to ask any questions or express concerns at the Budget Committee meeting. Thank you to the City Council and members of the Budget Committee for taking your time to participate in the budget process. We know we ask a lot of you to review this document, which has taken us a couple of months to create. And I look forward to discussing the proposed budget and answering questions regarding the document.
I have one.
Recognizes.
Sorry.
You were not.
Oh, I thought he asked
Yeah,
if we had any.
The chair recognizes Dennis.
there he is.
So on the roads, I know that's a big concern. It's a big lack of, but have we, and maybe you have, but I'd like to know if you've tried to contract with Lane County to do the chip sealing rather than a private enterprise, because I know a lot of cities do that.
We currently contract with Lane County to do our striping, but Faye? Yeah.
Dennis, I've talked with Lane County times, and a couple different times they weren't in the area. It didn't make sense for them. And then when they came down, they weren't comfortable in chip sealing some of the roads that we wanted to chip seal. So I do include them in the process to see if they're available, and if they are more economical than the bidding it out. But I do go through that process and use them because
Okay, good.
I'm aware they do it for other cities.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to call the public hearing portion of the meeting to order.
Is there a sign up sheet? I didn't see one.
No. So we have a number of requests that are in the budget. They're not in the budget, but we have a number of requests this evening to have themselves included in the budget or to adjust the budget where they are included. So you have the proposals, you have the copies of those, and let those that are here know that the budget committee has those, and most of them have representatives here to speak on those items, and so if they give their input in the public hearing, and if they can answer any questions from the information you already have.
Is there anyone here from Singing Creek? Is there anyone here from Singing Creek?
Point of order, I believe the first hearing is actually on the state shared revenue.
We're correct. So is there any public input on the possible uses of state revenue sharing monies?
Can I share with you?
Sure, absolutely.
All right,
Question on the state shirt.
chair recognizes Councilor Irvin.
Year after year, this item comes up, and I've just noticed that there's never been any comment or question on it, and so I feel there's an item that I would love to bring if there was a possibility to fund it. That would be the skate park fund, but I don't know the amount available, what its historical use is, if there's some kind of tradition around it. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Would you like me to address? So on page 40 of the revenue for the general fund, looking at the very top, the fines and forfeitures starts the state revenue sharing monies that we anticipate receiving from the state, $155,000. It also takes into consideration the liquor tax, cigarette tax, and the marijuana tax. Currently, they're just put into the general fund and they've been used to help balance. Not to say that you can't speak to what you want to see those monies spent on. If it isn't here, certainly bring it up. And if you had a specific for those, now's the time to put that out there.
So those funds are in the general fund and they're used for those general fund services. So they take care of parks, they take care of police, they're split out among all of that in the general fund. The marijuana tax there is both state shared and local. Local is the major portion of it now as a result of the ballot measure that took 75% of the state money away. I think the total state, we can't tell you under secrecy of law, but so.
So is it just mandated that there be an item?
Yes, under state law, we have to have a public hearing on the use of state shared revenues.
Effectively, it's no different than just general fund money. So
There's actually a secrecy agreement that Richard and I have to sign to be able to get the reports from the state to receive the marijuana tax monies. It's very strange. And then if we only have 5 dispensaries or thereabouts, and because we don't have 10 and we don't know where the arbitrary 10 came from, we can't divulge it separately in the budget because somebody could be able to deduct who paid what taxes. So that's it. It's serious in that we do actually sign what they call a secrecy agreement
Every year.
or twice a year, depends on if we lost it or not.
So just finish with a little statement on that. I would love to advocate for the skate park, but if I was doing streets or skate park, I would say streets. And general fund is a option for that. I will leave as much money in there as possible to improve.
Do you have a budget for the skate park?
Like a written one?
Yeah, like how, what's your vision? You do.
I believe that question was addressed to me. I'll answer it. Not a written budget at this time.
That helps.
There is a line item for skate park donations right now and an expenditure line. They did get a $10,000 grant from the Yard Foundation. And there are some donations in there as well as expenditures in the special trust fund to do that and do the plan and some improvements. So that's kind of the location right now, but there really isn't a budget of what you're doing yet. And that's what the Yard Foundation is going to be paying for, I think, is doing a design and yeah. But that's way towards the back, so
That would be a community guided input. Get what some community really wants and will support.
we kind of deviated from the public hearing, but.
All right, is there any other input for state revenue sharing monies? All right, then I will call the next item, which is public comment for request for appropriations, written and public testimony. We won't see anybody here from Singing Creek.
So Singing Creek is in the budget currently from last year. And last year their budgeted request was $1,860, I believe. This year they're asking for $1,600, $600 for the Los Pueblos camp instead of I think all of the 1,800 was for that camp last year, and then 1,000 for the Acorn Library that they want to form and put together, and you have that information.
Any discussion on this request?
Just to clarify, they're asking for less this year?
$1,600 a year.
Point of order.
Okay. The next item is the South Valley's Farmers Market. There's someone here from South Valley. Like to the podium.
My name's Karen Hudson, and I submitted a request last year for $5,000 and was funded for $3,000 of that. Was super helpful for our organization. It really gave us a lot of leverage to work on some of these projects that we had going on. and align us with other community organizations that can help leverage us even more to start looking for capacity building grants. I included in my letter, we joined the state association's cohort, learning group cohort of 10 other markets. And so now they're contributing a little bit to our budget to reimburse us for staff time that it takes to do all of our data collection, to start putting the pieces together for a larger grant. This year, I requested 5,000 again, specifically to try to fill this deficit that we have with the programs manager position that trains our market manager and works alongside our market manager to run these programs at the market. Some of the programs are our SNAP Double Up Food Bucks program, where we offer double the money to SNAP recipients in the form of fruit and vegetables. So we're the only location in town that offers that program, so we feel like that's valuable. And we're running a music program again. That's funded by the Waterford and Cottage Grove Community Foundation. You might notice the new Main Street banner up this week. That is funded by the Rich County Cultural Coalition for us to promote our music program in a bilingual format. So we were really excited to put that bilingual banner up the street. Our biggest new thing for this year is this York Foundation grant that we got for a children's program, and that's in partnership with Friends of the Cottage Grove Library. So we're offering bilingual story time at the market, along with kids vouchers for kids to shop the market. So I'm really excited about our season. I feel like the support from the city gives us a lot of leverage when we're working with our other partners, and it really just makes our downtown event on Saturdays a more robust event, having your guys' support. Do you guys have any questions for me?
I do. How many people do you usually get study?
Unfortunately, it can only be questions.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any questions for Ms. Benson?
Do you foresee any chance of getting self-sufficient where you wouldn't need us to, last year I thought we were going to help give you a little
Give us
boost.
leverage.
And, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of this learning group cohort that we're in. That included also, they provided us with a little bit of funding so that we can identify a market advancement project. And with that, we chose financial planning, strategic financial planning, and bookkeeping as our project, thinking that that was the piece, moving forward, make us more sustainable. So just with our operations and our booth fees, we're trying to work up to a structure that's going to make us more sustainable with our operations. Then we can continue, to align with partners for the programs. But yeah, our basic operations, we're really hoping that in the next couple of years, we get to a point where just the participation of the vendors is enough to keep us going on that basic level.
So the training is so any of the farmers or any of the people that are having a booth there, they can take the training from you guys. They're qualified to get into that? I'm not sure I'm being clear on that.
Training, so maybe I might have misunderstood what I said before about training was that our programs manager will train our other staff and work alongside with them. But we are starting to provide more specific small business training, or
that's what I was
partner with people that are giving that training to our vendors.
Okay.
Because our vendors' success is like
right. That's where I was going with that. I think that's something to be good for them to know if they need bookkeeping or how to make their business. Okay, good, thank you.
So we've been working with Rain
Oh,
quite a
perfect.
bit, which I know that you guys already support. So we definitely recognize that you guys indirectly support us in a lot of ways too, outside of just the line item on the budget. But having the additional funds that are unrestricted for us so that we can use them for staff is a really big deal with the state and all that.
Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah, I just noticed, it looks like mostly administrative, your administrative on a program managers, is that more
Yeah,
staffing?
so that's something looking back, I was thinking when I showed this out from last year, one thing that is missing in that budget is that has supported our market.
Okay,
And so basically the staff time that you see.
counting for that?
There is accounting for more of that, So instead of only paying our market manager for the time, the hours to market, we're recognizing that they need about 25 hours a week that should be paid. And so, yeah, that is why.
Yeah, more expansive of everything that qualifies instead of just surface.
Right.
We're moving to the next one. Okay. And is there anyone here from the Bohemia Mining Days?
Scott Borgioli, last name is spelled B like boy, Orcioli. And I'm the festival coordinator, which is essentially the executive director for the organization. One thing I wanted to ask is, do you have the festival expense budget? Handouts. It's a one-page sheet. Okay.
You have 14 of them?
I have, 15 or 16. Thank you. If you can pass it that way or whichever way.
Yes, sir.
Both reference. Yeah.
The cooking book.
There you go.
May I speak?
Can I ask a question since we're on?
Sure.
Do you have a balance sheet or spreadsheet of current donations?
Of current donations, I don't have it on enough.
Okay.
This budget is, for the most part, a bare bones budget. There is nothing further that we can cut with the festival unless we start cutting into the atmosphere of the festival. For example, the facade walls and people mover training. Those would be the two only items that we could cut. We looked into the facade walls. That's a historical part of Bohemia Mining Days. It sets the Old West atmosphere. And if we remove those and just kind of bare park, that will impact our visitors, that will impact our vendors, and that will impact ultimately the demise of the festival. So we looked into what if we built our own walls. We've done that in the past for some of the facade walls. They quickly wear. We have storage problems. We have transportation problems because we need a large enough trailer. So it's economically easier and more feasible to pay Wild West events for the facade walls, who, by the way, have raised their prices over the past 7, 8, 9, 10 years or so. That's a good deal. If we have to pay for storage, I'm sure we'll review that in the packet underneath the facade wall section. We would be looking at a minimum of $300 a month. So for $6,000 a year, or actually $1,500, what I got them down to, that's not a bad deal in the grand scheme of things and so forth. We're faced with a problem of the carnival. The carnival almost didn't come last year. We were able to cut our commissions down to $4,500. And at the conclusion of the festival, I met with the owner of the carnival to get us on the books for this year. And Crystal, the owner of Rainier, said that Cottage Grove doesn't bring in enough money. We're not a large enough festival. And that they have reduced their carnival unit down to one unit. The way I understand it, explain to me, one carnival unit is one set of rides that will do one event. Okay, so they can only do one event at a time. They used to be able to do 3 events at a time, but the problem is they can't find local labor. I even offered last year to hire some community folk to do work, and they had to decline that because they have a specialized crew that they need to train and bring in. Anyway, so we're stuck without them this year. We're walking into PMD this year. And that's going to be problematic last year. I spoke to Pat at Davis Shows. Half of their organization or company went out of business. The other half they have doing only very limited festivals and very certain fairs. So they can't expand. And I offered to negotiate a commission with them, even if we got $0 from that, just to bring that into Cottage Grove. And again, was told no in that regards. Security has gone up. We're looking at approximately a $3,000 increase in security from last year to this year. I don't think for next year it's going to go up that much further, but I can expect at least a $100 to $500 increase over what we're being charged this year. We can't cut on security, period. We just can't, and I will not cut the festival security. We need to ensure that we have adequate security personnel on hand so that if there's any problems or events, those can be quickly handled and taken care of. Additionally, I train our leadership team on security procedures. We do active shooting training, for example, and what to do in large-scale emergencies in the park. So we have a very highly trained leadership team that is always present at the festival. I mentioned facade walls before. So if we go into the logistics, facilities, and utilities, here's a huge part of the expense of the festival. We're responsible for having a logistics manager, and all fairs and festivals need to have a logistics manager. Our logistics manager lays out the electrical cords, sets up the spider boxes, connects all cables into the generators, problem solved throughout the festival, also hooks up the water for the food vendors and then the other vendors who need water. That's a big task. That's nothing that a volunteer can do. We need somebody who is specialized in that area. This particular person has been with Bohemian Mining Days for over a decade and is extremely familiar with the setup and with the layout. So we can't skimp on that. We can't go down to a volunteer status on that. The porta potties, we can't cut that. The other option is just to get rid of the porta potties and utilize the regular bathrooms at Corner Park. And as you all know, that would become a disaster with toilets being clogged in a city. Probably a dedicated public works person would need to be dedicated to being on call to unclog any toilets and so forth. So we all know what problems that can bring to that. So we can't cut on that. And we do get a discount, by the way. In fact, this year, we're approximately $500 or $600 lower on the toilets because we don't have to bring porta potties to the carnival. So, and And then the electrical cable, the junction box, utility parts. Yes, the city provides us golf carts, but we actually need the utility carts to transport more of the heavier items and bulkier items that the golf carts would not otherwise be able to carry. So we have 2 of those, and we don't have an option. We don't own any of the electrical cables. We don't own any of the spider boxes. There's nobody in town that will give us those on loan. So we just rent those from Sunbelt Rentals, and they do give us a discount. We have a negotiated rate that we worked out with them. And then we have the barricades and so forth. So obviously the barricades are needed for the parade and the Orr Cart races, and any traffic blocking from around Corner Park, predominantly the parking lots and so forth. And I think our bill last year for the barricades was approximately $980. So those are items we can't cut, period. There's just no way. And if we cut that, it's just going to turn into a mess with the festival and so forth. We also have the administrator and executive director for Bohemia Mining Days. I'm giving a huge break on what I'm paid. This is a full-time job, about 6 months a year, and then the rest of the year it's about a quarter to a half-time job. So if we were to pay somebody the proper way and hire them as an employee and give them minimum wage per hour, you're looking at approximately $18,000, $19,000 for the whole year for an executive director, just because of everything that's involved with the festival. And what I do is I handle every aspect of the festival and bring on volunteers and manage the volunteer leadership team on that. So we need that. And historically in the past, there were years, I think prior to 2012, where it was a volunteer position, and then BMD ran into problems every year where the festival director would quit because it's a lot of work for pretty much nothing. And so they were going through a big turnover. And so Bohemia Mining Days implemented a paid system for the festival director and so forth. And I was not part of that. I was not involved in that. That was before my time and involvement in Bohemia Mining Days. So I can't speak to the exact specifics on the history of that. But I do have our Bohemia Mining Days president with me here. If you need to have any questions about that, he can give you some back-end history. So our budget request is half, pretty much, of our budget. And I think that that's fair and reasonable, and Bohemia Mining Days would be therefore raising the other half of the budget. And the reason why I have it listed is that because the other half that we're responsible for fundraising gives the community opportunity to get their names and signs and banners and sponsorship into the festival, and we can still make it a festival event. I'm going to tell you right now that this year we are extremely tight. Businesses are cutting back, donors are cutting back because of financial concerns. A lot of businesses are getting hit with the economy, and the donations this year versus last year are drastically different. The only reason why we're able to have the festival this year is because we had a carryover from last year. I was able to, at the last minute, with the help of a city employee, get a grant from the American Rescue Recovery Fund for COVID. So we were able to get a $50,000 grant last year. But we had delayed expenses, and approximately half of that grant was used up earlier this year to pay back bills from last year, because our treasurer left at the end of the festival last year. She was supposed to leave in December of 2021, but she hung on to carry us through the festival because she knows how much work it was. And when she left, there was a problem with the bank. We couldn't write checks and pay any of the bills. until state records got updated and until we got a new treasurer on board and so forth. And we had to be very careful on who we selected with the treasurer because you have to interview and ensure that somebody is qualified and capable to handle that position and so forth. And we're also going to do a dual treasurer bookkeeper staff, and we're hiring a bookkeeper to take care of our taxes and paperwork in regard to the festival, but we're not asking for funding for that. Now, the People Mover train, I just want to say, I was going to cut that last year, and I decided not to because what that does is it brings people to different areas of the city. It conducts tours. So those people who are new and visitors and outsiders and so forth can come and ride the train and get a tour of the city, see the murals, see the covered bridges, go to the different events that are surrounding Bohemian Mining Days. For example, this year, one of the stops of the train is going to be at the Trinity Lutheran Church on Harrison, and they're going to do the chicken dinner again. Or they're bringing it back, I should say. The last time they did that, I believe, was 2019. So they're excited about it, and we're going to have a stop over there. We're going to bring the train downtown because part of our theme this year involves the murals and movies. So we're going to do a tour of the murals and hopefully get something set up for Animal House and any other movie that was held down here. So we'll be working with some of the downtown organizations for that. So, I hate to say it, I think I'm asking you all to take a very serious and close look at this. If we don't get the requested funding, I can tell you it's going to be very hard to put on Bohemian Mining Days next year. So bringing into that topic of the conversation, I thought about, well, what if we just did Bohemian Mining Days every other year? That's not going to work. We're going to lose on that, period. It'll be out of mind, out of sight with the vendors. We're going to lose the people or the attendees who come year after year for Bohemian Mining Days, and it's just going to crush the festival, and it'll effectively be the end of the festival period and so forth. So I don't know how else to tell it to you. I appreciate you all, but we're in this position. And I noticed, I looked in past budgets and so forth, and the Chamber of Commerce, for example, gets 40-something thousand. I think there was Eugene Symphony last year or this current budget year, $27,000 or something along those lines. And there is a line item for BMD, but BMD doesn't have any funding. And then historically looking back, there was, I believe, $18,000, but it was a loan from the city. I might be wrong on the exact figure and so forth, but it was a loan. There was an issue with the stage, and then BMD had to pay it back and so forth. So my point to bringing that up and saying that is that we don't get city funding, and every other area festival gets city funding or is put on by the Chamber of Commerce. So if we can't get the funding, we're going to be having a very different discussion, unfortunately. And BMD does put Cottage Grove on the map and brings thousands and thousands of people to Cottage Grove. So what are we going to do without Bohemian Mining Days? That's my concern. And that's not my fault. That's just the way it is. That's the way it's been set up. It's unfortunately sad that the Bohemian Mining Days relies on donors for an $80,000 budget. And historically looking back, by the way, going back to 2013, the budget has varied from $47,000 to $65,000. But that's from 2013, and every year since 2013, it's gone up each year. So the budget 10 years ago would be doable in today's environment, okay? But unfortunately, we're not getting the donors, and everything's going up. So that's what we're up against and what we're faced against. I would highly welcome questions or any discussion on this. I can answer your questions right now while I'm here before you.
Councillor Flick.
So couple questions. Are your 990s current? So I guess we can look those up on GuideStar, but I guess I would want to see, some reports for P&Ls for the last several years. We're not seeing any of the revenue you've had. We're just looking at a one-year budget without any historical information. I cannot justify this amount of money without more information. And so I would need to look at historical trends in both your revenue and expenditures and see, where we're at. But I'll be honest, I certainly can't support $38,000 for BMD. So I need to have some understanding of how we got here. And if this is the case, I'm sorry, I cannot support this as an ongoing expenditure in the budget.
Okay, can I respond?
Yeah, please.
In response to that, and don't take this personally, I think the city should be embarrassed that they don't support the biggest festival here in Cottage Grove that brings in tens of thousands of people. I think that that's a huge embarrassment to the city on that.
So is that a no?
What do you mean? Is that a no?
Providing your financials?
We can get that. But that's my comment. I think that it's an embarrassment. I feel embarrassed for the city for not supporting booking and lining days throughout the year. So.
What do you have in reserves right now?
Right now, we have approximately $35,000, $36,000 in our accounts. And I will pull it up. It'll just take me 30 seconds here to pull it up, and I will tell you what's in the account.
And I'd like to comment back about your embarrassment. I've been here 63 years. Green Days has been every year, and it's worked. And if this is just a glitch and it's needed a little boost, but it's not something the city's had to support because it's been taken care of because of donations and so forth from the community. So the city is tax dollars, and I feel pretty strongly about tax dollars supporting the utilities, the emergency services, things like that. And we help out other small things, but this is a pretty big thing, pretty big ask. So
yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you. And my discussion with previous festival staff and administrative staff and so forth, it's been a struggle each year. And BMD has broken even on some years. And as I mentioned earlier, there was a year, 2017-18, where BMD had to get a loan from the city and so forth and pay it back in the following year. It's just a struggle. And Mr. Soulsby, I mean, you're right. It has survived over the past years, but the expenses have not jumped also as high as they have in recent years. We have not had last year was the full festival since 2019. 2021 was very scaled back and thus had extremely limited expenses associated with that. And there was no festival in 2020. So our costs, if you compare the costs, now versus then, the costs have gone up very significantly, especially, again, as I mentioned, with security and so forth. So that's kind of a problem that we're faced against with it. And also donors have cut back. Looking in past years' donations, with the exception of our grant last year, we did get some goodwill last year. However, it was by one donor who made a large donation and made the stipulation that that was going to be a one-time donation in terms of how large that particular donor made. But anyway, in our accounts, we have $15,872.71 in one account, and then in the other account, we have $19,998.87. So almost $36,000 is what we have, $35,871 and some change is what we have. We have more money coming in. We have donors coming in. We've been challenged by an anonymous donor. Well, they asked us to remain anonymous, that they'll give us $15,000 if we can secure $20,000 in fundraising by June 1st. And the only reason why they're doing that, and they made it very clear that this is the only year they're going to do that is because of an article that came out in the Chronicle newspaper and so forth. So we will not be able to count on that next year. Are we going to make that? We're about 5,000 short of it right now, and I've been aggressively seeking donations from area businesses and so forth. So, and the problem is, and I, again, stress, don't take my comment personally at all, okay? But I mean, that's just the reality of it, is that what are we going to do with Bohemia Mining? That's just the reality of it. In years past, we've relied on some of the more wealthy donors in the community to support the festival. And with increased expenses and so forth, okay, the ratio between expenses and income, so to speak, have diminished, okay, or are diminished. And in years past, BMD was supported by just a few people in the community who supported Bohemia Mining Days. And I think that was done through the 80s or possibly even 90s as I look through historical records and so forth. So things have changed over the years. And I wish that I was just coming here to give you a good report saying we don't need any money or we just need $1,000 or $2,000. I wish that would be, great. And that would actually make me look really good. But I don't like coming here having to essentially beg for money and all that. But unfortunately, it is what it is.
Chair recognizes Councilor Dreer.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott, for Mr. Borjoli for coming. First, I want to commend you for all of your negotiating skills for these discounts and kind of getting grandfathered in on certain rates. What I'm hearing is an organization that's growing and you're trying to bring it into a modern era where it's relied on volunteers, a few donors, and the growing pains that come with bringing that into a modern era. I hear your frustration. I'm wondering, when I looked y'all up on GuideStar, you're a 501c4.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that being a 501c4 limits how many donations you can get?
Counselor, I'm really glad you brought that up. In a way, yes, it does. So what has happened, and again, I was not part of this. This is something historical with Bohemia Mining Days. Years ago, the Bohemia Mining Days Heritage Association was established. That was established as a 501c3. So for donors who are wanting a tax write-off, they donate to Bohemia Mining Days Heritage Association. And then what BMD does is we basically just ask for a grant. Just a simple one-page, one-sentence grant from Bohemia Mining Days Heritage Association. And then they just transfer the money into the BMD account and so forth. And do I like that setup? Absolutely not. I think it's muddy. I think it's unprofessional in my opinion. But I was asked to be the festival coordinator last year, and I walked into this and saw,
So you have a C4 and a C3 side? That's not uncommon. I didn't see the C3 when I looked y'all up, though.
Yeah, you want to say something, Joel?
No, it's through the Bohemia Mining Days Foundation. That's the way we were legally advised to set it up that way, gosh, about 8 or 9 years ago. So no, I know it's not uncommon. It seems a little bit redundant, but yeah, that's the way it's set up right
now. And I haven't had the time to do this, but we need to look at how do we get Bohemia Mining Days into a C3, because when I've looked at other area festivals, they're all C3s. So I don't see a reason why Bohemia Mining Days cannot be a C3. So, and just to simplify things in that regards.
Thank you.
So I guess I'm recognizing myself because I have questions. So I run a nonprofit, so I get the frustrations that you face, but nothing that you've presented has any sort of financial plan to not have this be the same thing every year. And of all the things we do, I would never ask the city to pay for half of everything. So while yes, it brings people in, are you developing a financial strategy, a fundraising plan, a way to pivot? So that it's not coming to this group every year for half the money. Whether that be grant writing,
This
donors.
is the plan before you. I've looked at every other festival in the area, and every other festival in the area gets city support.
Do they fund half of it?
At this level?
I don't know. The Rhododendron Festival in Florence is operated by the Chamber of Commerce on that. So there's city support directly and indirectly with that. The Scandinavian Festival in Junction City gets festival support in the park, and the festival provides toilets and logistical items for that. So, this is the plan. I mean, for a town the size of $10,000 with an $80,000 budget, bare bones budget, that's a lot to ask for fundraising. And we're in we're in a situation right now where we're facing a recession, or we're in a recession, whatever it is. But the problem is that BMD can't sustain itself, period. And I recognized that immediately when I walked into Bohemian Mining Days in 2021. I looked at the budget back then and I said, this is unsustainable, because when I met with previous leadership and was told that it's a struggle each year, and that's why a lot of the previous board members have left, because they just didn't see a clear vision forward with Bohemian Mining Days. There's a problem with volunteers. It's very, very hard to get volunteers. Yeah, you get a certain percentage who drop out, but there's a lot to do in the festival. I mean, we have, trash pickup and so forth. There's a lot to do in the festival and so forth. Anybody can say that they can do a better job than this, I'm sure, looking on face value, but once you get your hands involved in it and see it work again, it's pretty successful. I don't hold anything against you. If ultimately the budget committee decides not to give money to Bohemian Mining Days, I don't hold anything against you guys at all. I mean, I love you guys all. Some of you I'm friends with and so forth. And if not, then we'll see what we can do for next year. But this is kind of where we're at.
Are there any other questions?
To clarify, when you say the festival may not happen this year, do you mean like in 2 months, or do you mean like in 14 months?
14 months. The festival is going to happen this year. And I don't write grants. In fact, I've never written a grant in my life, and last year was the first time, and it was easy to do online. Okay. If we were able to get a grant writer and give a certain percentage of the grant money to that person, which is very common in nonprofits, we could possibly get some grants. I spoke with some people about that. I'm actually meeting with somebody later this week to discuss that further and see if we can bring somebody on. But, grants are shaky. Either you get it or you don't, and it has to be written, I'm sure, as a nonprofit, it has to be written in a proper format and targeted towards what the purpose of the grant is for, and then used for that purpose. So,
how about a GoFundMe?
I would love it. I would love it.
It's easy.
Yeah, it is. It is easy, and
it gets lots of support.
And we might. I agree with you, Ms. Yellen. I think we're certainly going to have to try that. We were thinking about doing a donation box also at the festival this year, but then we have to have somebody to man the information booth right next to it and make sure that person doesn't walk away, and secure the donation box so that theft can't occur. I'm sure, as you know, the environment has changed over the past several years. So there's, possibly a little bit more criminal element involved in life. So we have to be mindful of that. So, yeah.
That's why I thought GoFundMe might be a good
No,
option.
that-
It is, it really is a really great
That's a
way.
very good suggestion.
So I just want to clarify, so you said there's a $15,000 donation pending ability to raise $20,000 and you're 5,000 short of that, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. So by June 1st, if I can raise another 5,000, which I think is doable, then we'll get that $15,000. And then that will break us even on the budget for this year. But you have to remember, we walked in this year with an extra $50,000, and then approximately half of that was appropriated towards bills that were hanging over from last year, okay, because our treasurer left and we didn't have access to the bank account, so we couldn't pay any of the bills that incurred since approximately June of last year.
And there's no revenue collected at all at this festival, no admission, no?
No, I looked at doing admission at the festival, and I would love that because a lot of the other area festivals do charge admission. Not all of them, but there are a lot of other area festivals that do. And if we did that, we would have to fence off the park and we would have to hire staff to monitor the entrances. And it looks like we can't have just one entrance. We'd have to have about 3 entrances into the festival because we have the people mover train, or even if we just cut the people mover train, that section over by the bathrooms in Winter Park, we need to have that open access for them.
Yeah, I want to say thank you for the work you're doing, and that it is one of those things in Cottage Grove that really makes it special and unique, and so there's a lot of value there.
Thank you, Counselor.
There's a lot of non-tangible value as well. The monetary value is something I'd be interested in. I don't know if you have, or when you go back to put together some of the financial numbers, there's a way to quantify the financial impact of the festival. And I feel like that would be a good thing to understand, what impact, what does that bring in financially for the city? Because once again, we have this obligation to use the money that we have to provide first and foremost core services. And as you know, everyone's in the same boat here.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm generally, I would play with the idea of what could be leveraged in some amount, but I want to be as responsible with the money and see that there is a return to the city on it, that it does provide a boost for our businesses, that utilizes the tax base for them to stay in business and all that. And under that framework, I could support in some amount. I don't really know what that amount would be because I don't have that information. So that would be a helpful thing. And even if it doesn't happen now, if you are able to acquire that information, maybe to bring it back.
Thank you, Councilor Irvin. I'm all about community, and I explored, well, let me say this. In 2021, I actually thought it was neat downtown, to be honest with you. The only problem was it was too hot. There was a lot of complaints of people in the community, and the majority of locals wanted in Cortland Park. So I thought about moving it downtown again for last year. And we talked about logistics and power and all that. And there's even a bigger logistical problem downtown. But I thought it would benefit the businesses downtown and just be neat to bring people downtown for an event. But again, there's more logistical problems. And then next year, the streets are going to be, downtown's going to be redone next year. So we can't move it downtown next year, at least my understanding is that we can, utilize that and get more people downtown in that regards. But in terms of supporting the businesses, I'm all about community. I like the nonprofits. I roll out the red carpet for the local nonprofits in Bohemian Mining Days. I try to get as many businesses involved as possible and get their banners up on the tennis courts and have them sponsor individual activities inside the park so that we can have individual signs at those activities for sponsorships so that people know local businesses are putting money into the festival and are supporting the festival and so forth. So it's hard. I'm only one person, and this is actually more than a full-time job for this time of year. And my help is the leadership team, and bless them. I mean, they're wonderful. They're hard workers, but they are volunteers, and most of them do work full-time. So I'm fortunate that I'm a meteorologist. I only work during the winter time for agriculture, and then this is my dead time of year, so I maybe work 2 or 3 hours a day, and the rest of the time I can spend towards booking the mining days and so forth. So, but it is a lot of work for the festival.
Thank you, Scott. Are there any other questions for Scott? All right.
Do I have a time frame where I can get the documents that Councilor Fleck had requested?
Well, I was going to propose, if the committee had interest, that it be contingent on review from the council. Because we can put something in the budget, we don't have to expend those funds, so that we could just review, and go forward, maybe have a subcommittee of the council to take a look at where we're at. So that was going to be my suggestion.
All right. The next one is the Friends of the Cottage Grove Carousel. Is there any?
Thank you, Ms. Gilbert.
Is there any?
So they're asking for a $5,000 similar to feasibility study. We're currently doing a market analysis as well for the downtown, and we've talked about the potential of that being a part with that, and it would easily be something that would be, I think they said more than $10,000, but close to the $7,000 to $8,000 for that feasibility study. They did ask originally for funding to help promote the carousel. Right now, we can't do that because of their current location and the operation in
That word, help what? Sorry.
Promote.
Sorry.
Yeah. And we can't do that because they're operating in an industrial park. They can run in an industrial park as a part of refurbishment or repair or remodeling and building it up. But in order to operate the carousel for rides and for that entertainment purposes, they can't be in an industrial park unless it's an ancillary use. But the feasibility would be to be looking at places to be able to move the carousel to and what kind of operations it could be. So that's what they're asking for. No.
Okay. Are there any, is there any other public comment or request for appropriations?
You have,
what?
we had one other, and Carly's here from the Food Hub, and did you give that? No, you didn't pass that one out. The Food Hub has asked for a $5,000 assistance from the city. That's the program that's on 10th Street. But and I think the reason we didn't pass this one out, and we haven't talked to Carly, but there are grant funds left from the previous grants. And we're trying to get a hold of those grantors to see if they're willing to use those funds to take care of this for you. So in that way, we may be bringing this back to the committee or back to the council and saying, hey, these grant funds are there. We've got them from the Ford Family Foundation and from the Oregon Cascades West COG, the Council of Government. And if those grant funds, which were 2 years old from the old rare program that didn't finish out the year, that would more than cover this request. So we may be looking at that. We're still trying to get a hold of those grantors and get some information and response back to them.
Would you like me to present the rest of these? Just in case I don't come up with anything.
Go for it.
On the record. Thank you for that preliminary. That was really interesting. My name is Carly Boyer, and I'm the program coordinator at Bohemia Food Hub, and I am a RARE. So if you don't know what that is, it's a resource assistance for rural environments, and it's an AmeriCorps program. So I came in as a capacity builder to complete 1,700 hours, and I'm almost finished with my service. One of my biggest projects was doing the local places goals that were defined by the EPA, which Bohemia Food Hub and the city of Cottage Grove led in partnership. So the background is that, you all know about this, but just to preface, there was a two-day workshop held with over 60 local attendants in November 2020 to define goals and develop action plans to improve the local food system. And this work was completed by a committee group of stakeholder members and was adopted by the City Council of the City of Cottage Grove in 2021. So part of my work was implementing those goals. There were 4 primary goals as part of the community action plan. One was identify strategies to support and enhance existing commercial kitchen and food incubator spaces. 2, improve food security and public health in Cottage Grove. 3, increase the involvement of Cottage Grove's underrepresented populations in local food and cuisine initiatives. And 4, build stronger value and supply chain connection for farmers and food producers for both local and regional markets. Specified under goal number 4, action 4.2, identify the need to gather information via survey or other method with area farmers, food producers, and restaurateurs about their production and distribution needs. So King of Food Hub led the work of creating the South Valley Food Producer Survey with community partners, and we are currently writing the assessment report to complete action 4.2 identified within the LSLP goals. So to talk about the survey, which is completed, we had 46 participants. We were able to create an incentive with $50 gift cards because farmers really work hard and don't have a lot of time to fill out a lengthy questionnaire. We had 44 questions total, so it was a pretty involved survey, really looking at their production, their distribution needs, barriers to equipment, what do they need to really thrive and grow our regional food system. So we got really great data, and it's really extensive. And so right now, I'm working on this report. It's one of my final projects for my service year, which I will complete by July 14th. And I've worked with several PhD research associates, and I've been able to work with Kristen Penner of the Oregon Coast Visitors Association. She's a value chain coordinator. Penny Feltner of Coast Work Willamette. Also worked with Karen Benson, who spoke earlier with Farmers Market. We've also been involved with the RFSP cohort, which is a state grant-funded food hub group. And we're really working on value chain distribution, regional food hubs, and how to connect to each other and to really bring regional foods to other regional foods, and not just rely on corporate distribution models, but really leaning into the nonprofit model. So we're doing a lot of research and really looking at a very tangible way to invigorate our local food system. So to really complete this work and to launch the whole report, we're hoping to have an open house and launch event where I'll be sharing all of these reports with the public, sharing our findings, which will have lasting economic impact for Cottage Grove and South Plain County. It's going to have a pretty significant impact, and it also completes the work that the city of Cottage Grove committed to with booking a food hub. So I'm asking for $5,000 as well to support that completion so that we have a tangible product which will be public and made available in tangible form, but also published online for anybody who wants to benefit from this data that we work so hard to get. So like I said, the deliverables are the report, the stakeholder presentation. We distributed one-pagers to all of the survey participants, and then also the $50 gift card participants, which were primarily funded by Low-Income Economic Development, Coast Work Watershed Council, City of Crestwell donated $500, and then of course in-kind donations from the community. So our total budget, which I had on the proposal that I gave to the city manager is 15,000, and we've gotten 10,000 towards this role. So we're asking for 5 to complete it. Do you have any questions for me?
Chair, thanks. I just want to say thank you for all the work that you're doing. I know you've been very effective in telling the story of Bohemia Food Hub, helping to build, collecting that data from, it's my understanding, will help leverage potential other economic development initiatives and investments in our community. So that's no small feat. And I'm thankful to our city manager for looking for other ways outside of this budget process to get those funds to you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I did make some brochures. I've been doing a lot of work to just professionalize, tidy, really make everything very transparent in the nonprofit so it's more accessible. We do a lot of work. We've really helped to lift 36 businesses, and then we've also helped to establish new businesses, 13 new businesses have come out of the food trust. And we're in a pretty huge growth phase right now. We've funded, we've gotten a lot funded in last year. We've done the RBDG, which is the USDA grant, Rural Business Development Grant, LFPP, which is Local Foods Promotion, the last P. But we're doing a lot of work to really build our self-sufficiency and to offer more tangible resources, including equipment that was identified within the survey. We've already actioned getting those pieces of vital equipment, so farmers don't need to buy them themselves. We can have that as a nonprofit so that, you know, larger economic impact by the community. So I did make a few brochures. I didn't have enough for everybody, but if anybody's interested, it just kind of goes over our general nonprofit structure, what we're doing, what we're offering. Yeah, any other questions?
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Hi, my name is Sean Goddard, BIPOC Artist Collective. This weekend, we had our first annual BIPOC Artists Collective Art Show. It was a huge success. Unfortunately, there was not a lot of businesses open, but the businesses that were open, they did profit substantially. Greg Irvin, what ward do you represent? I think the fourth. I'll challenge you soon. I'm going to go to the legislature and ask for $10 million so we can rebuild a men transition center that will be run by our police department. I'm going to be asking for additional $3 million for art to be funded inside of Cottage. I'm going to be working with Senator Manning so that veterans will have 400 beds available in that men's transition. 400 beds. I will bring that money for arts. So Bohemian Mining Days will never have to come. I will be forming a committee for 2024 to 2028 to have a strategic outlook and planning so that they will be able to sustain themselves for the duration of their existence in the arts, and the protection and safety of this community won't be leveraged. Our police won't be defunded as our sheriff have been. Thank you for your time.
So we have reached the time for the recess. The public comment period is over. Do we want to recess until Thursday, or do we want to continue as time allows?
Chair, I would propose that we go to at least 9 o'clock and then kind of review where we're at that point.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Well, let's get into the work session then. Proposed budget, document review and discussion.
So just kind of giving you the first 36 pages of the budget essentially are some background information, a little bit more detail in there. some really great summaries. I don't necessarily think I need to go through all that, but I do like pulling out the one big page, because for me, looking through all, how many pages we have for 90,000 pages, but this one summarizes, puts it all in one place where you can really see what's going on. I'm not gonna think, but, but do draw your attention to that. That's, I think, a real useful piece that you'll find in many but it's a piece that we put in and show. The other piece we do want to highlight is on page 4. It summarizes the general fund and what the general fund expenditures are going to. Chop up the little dollar there in the picture, showing how that breaks out for every dollar, the percentage of where it goes in the general fund budget. Any questions on all those summary documents or pieces in there? Any comments there? And otherwise, then we'd move to the funds and line items.
Just a general question, if I may.
Counselor.
In the introduction, about you don't want to manipulate the budget or change it after we're less, so it's for unforeseen things that come up essentially. But since we're going to be going into a big topic of street funding, is this the time that it needs to be addressed, or that happen post through the council? Does that fit the rules of budgeting?
That fits the rules of budgeting because we have no idea what the committee is going to come up with. I mean, if they come up with, let's say they say, yeah, we want to issue some bonds and do a capital improvement levy or something like that, that money's not going to come in until next year's budget. And now they could create a tough transportation utility fee that would be attached on all the utility bills, $10 a month adding to the utility bills. If they did that, that could be something that would start time during the year once the council puts that in place. They could put that in place by a vote. They could put that in place just by action, which then could be referred to the ballot as well. So all of those, we don't know when that would happen. We don't know what kind of amounts. They could raise the gas tax, but the gas tax has to go to a vote now. So all of those things are unforeseen. We don't know what's going to happen. If something is going to impact this budget, then the budget committee could be called together, or the council would do a supplemental budget. And there's limitations under the state law, how much and where those trigger bringing the budget committee back together, or the council doing it on them by themselves. So all of that will play out as the committee gets their recommendation put together in August, and this budget will be in place by then. It's not, then the committee won't be meeting because we will be shut down. But yeah, so that's right within the law. I mean, and if it's huge, I mean, if they come up with some grand plan that's going to generate a couple $1 million in this budget year, then yeah, it might mean the budget committee gets to come back together and make those adjustments. But probably it's going to be stuff that's going to be something the council would do. Yeah. And I mean, it goes the same thing with skate park. I mean, you guys could get a donation for $20,000 and start building. That could get put in. And at the next council meeting, we'll be doing a resolution for grant money that's got spent in the current budget year, but it was a special purpose. And so those kind of things can change the budget as well throughout the year, and do.
There's state law that we follow through the budget manual for the state of Oregon that dictates how we implement additional funds into this budget once it's been approved and then ultimately adopted by the city council.
Thank you.
So no other questions generally, then let's move to the general fund. And here, if it's okay as we move through the line items, do you want me just to answer the questions?
Yes, please.
Okay. So general fund, this is where our general operations come from. And on page 39 is the revenue for the general fund. Our $5,660,000 in property tax increase there. We are budgeting that on the basis that the property's values will go up to 3%. In past years, we've done 2. We did the 3% this year, and that the values will go up by that. And this is based on the numbers from Lane County, their collectibles and everything there on our levy. Delinquent property tax has stayed pretty constant. Everything else there, we have our franchise fees. You'll notice some of our franchise fees, and they will continue to drop just because of the industries that they're in or possibly the level of service that they provide. Others are growing as well. Moving down through, you'll see our engineering fees close to the bottom of the page. At the bottom of the big group of revenues there, engineering fees are up 330. That's because of the projects that we'll be doing. The wastewater treatment plant, the Main Street revitalization, that's our percentage that we get to help pay for those costs associated with the engineering services or managing the engineering services that are going on. So we should see those increases there. Parking fines, traffic fines are down because we are short-staffed in police department. We're anticipating that will start increasing during next year's budget as we get people on staff and get them to the academy. Our officer we just had sworn in on Monday night, last Monday, she is scheduled to go to the academy in October. DPSST is behind on classes. They need to open more classes up and get more law enforcement personnel going through their DPSST training classes. So she's clear into October before she's able to go to DPSST for 16 weeks. And then she comes back and she's on as a trainee for for the remaining portion of the year. And then she'll be able to be an officer by herself. So it's a process. We have four that are scheduled right now, Chief?
Just one right now.
Just one right now. Yeah.
We just got 2 out.
Yeah, 2 out. Yeah.
And the lateral doesn't have to go.
And neither does our captain.
No.
So.
Can we interject questions as we?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
On that note, can she do parking this summer without being a warrant officer to the academy? If she was to do parking tickets and stuff like that?
So potentially the challenge is putting anybody in, well, let me back up. The real challenge is if she's doing that, she's not in training. So she's still in training.
Okay.
So we have a field training program that has set phases and generally takes a certain amount of time. So we're trying to do everything we can to get as much of that accomplished before she goes to the academy, which is a bit of the cart before the horse, but we don't have any other choice. It's agencies throughout the state are having to find things to do with their officers that they hire. Now, fortunately, because of the partnerships we have with our neighboring agencies, for example, one of the things that we're able to do is a bigger department like Springfield, Eugene, they are able to put together little in-house academies to get their recruits trained. And so we've been invited to participate with that. So we're going to actually send her to 2-week in-house Springfield Academy. So she'll get a lot of training done there that we don't presently have the expertise to do or the instructors to do. So we try to maximize that time. But if we take her away from that, then we just...
Never mind. That sounds good. That's good. Good for her. Good for us.
The increase in the engineering you mentioned because of the projects, do you foresee the bulk of that being this year? Like we're not going to spend a lot on engineering on Main Street next year.
There's a lot of engineering going on right now. That's what this year will be. The actual construction will start in next spring, late spring, early summer next year on Main Street.
This should decrease again next year.
Yeah, and we'll be having some more next year as well, right?
Councilor Urban.
Yeah, that trick. This isn't the street fund, so I had this number of about 1.5 million match give or take whatever it is, but this is in addition to that, right? Because that's not counted in
Right.
total project.
Yeah.
So this is the revenue that's generated. So when we do a project, there's a certain percentage charged to the project that comes into the general fund. So 12% is the number that I believe Bert and I used for this, because that's the part that myself, Shauna, and staff assist from the general fund in managing those projects. So we do a percentage of return of the total cost of that project. So with the clarifier, there's a $1.228 million project. 12% of that project is coming back in as fees projected as revenue.
So basically, we're paying ourselves.
Right.
Back in.
So we're taking some of those enterprise funds and other funds like the federal grant funds and we're able to move it into the general fund to pay for some.
To say cover your direct costs.
Oh, I misquoted it. It's 8%. Well, that's what they're saying.
So you're saying this is like the grant covering your direct engineering costs?
Yeah, it comes in.
That shows as revenue.
It's a revenue side.
And do I need to ask? The engineering fees are specifically for street funds, or does this cover the other engineering jobs that the city has?
So we bring this revenue in from all the projects that are outside the general fund. If we're doing a general fund project, it doesn't make any sense to take general fund money and move it from one bucket to the other. But if we're doing a utility project, water, sewer, storm, street project, parks, capital project that has money outside of the general fund, that's when we bring that percentage into the general fund.
Okay.
I'm assuming we're going to see a line item in those funds, because we don't have an engineering department in-house anymore, right? So
yeah, so when we go to those other funds, you'll see the engineering fee calculated in those other funds that gets transferred.
And is that essentially a wash, or?
No, because we're paying ourselves and paying those services that we provide from in the general fund that are being done for other funds. And kind of going back a little bit, the city operates their budget in funds. I mean, each one of our funds is a separate business, essentially. So we have our general fund that's operated as one business. Our special revenues, all of those funds that are in the special revenue fund type, they're individual business. Streets, the bicycle footpaths, and then you move into enterprise funds. The water fund is a separate fund, and the sewer fund, the wastewater fund, the storm drainage fund, all of them are separate operating self-balancing accounts. So they're businesses that are functioning and doing their services. And if we're using employees or equipment in the general fund, then those funds that are a separate business that use them pay for those services. And so basically that's what we're doing, but we wouldn't pay ourselves out of the general fund just because it's the same business right there. Does that help? I think maybe clarify how the funds are used a little bit more.
Yeah, and thank you for that clarity. The wash was, when it's all said and done, like the funds that are counted as revenue into the general fund, is that more than making up for the engineering costs that we pay out of the appropriate funds to our engineering?
So you're going to have engineering costs throughout these various businesses that pay for the specific engineering that happened to have that project around. We're taking a percentage of what that fee is and allocating a portion of it to the general fund to cover those costs that Richard spoke of. So it's not an actual wash per se, money in, money out. It's based on what they charge us is what we take our 8% of to pay the general fund items that support it.
Okay, that was the question.
So maybe just a little bit more context, sorry about that. So when we have a fully staffed engineering team, we have a city engineer, civil engineer, and we had an assistant downstairs. What would happen is that if we we contract for lots of engineering services to design West Yost to other services. So if our engineering staff essentially just reviewed the work that was being done, we would get a 2% revenue from that project to the general fund to cover engineering services. If our staff reviewed it, did the bid work, and did the on-site project management, we would get 8%. And then if our staff, when we had Mr. Sisson here, he designed several projects. If he designed a project like the dog park or others, then, and he was the go-to person that reviewed, designed, and then managed it, we would get 16%. So now that we're using the two outside contract firms, we are still, between Sean and myself and planning and others, we're still doing the review of the documents, we're assisting with the bid, and we're also, Sean has been trained and does a lot of project management on site. We're taking the 68%. We're not doing the design work, and that's already being paid for by the utility fund for designing the project.
That does help, thank you.
So I hope that helps.
So on the next page, we talked about our state shared revenues already and how those are fluctuating. You'll notice just out of interesting trends, you'll notice the OLCC liquor tax in 2020, 21, and 21, 22 was 198,000, 197,000. This year's budgeted, we've budgeted down to 180, and we're actually probably not going to hit that number. And so we've proposed 170 for next year. If you look at previous budgets before the 2021, it was actually down 2. This is a result of the pandemic. A lot more consumption of alcohol apparently occurred. So we see it in our budget. Just exciting information there to share. Trying to think what the loss is in, I think it's about 75% in the marijuana tax is what the rough number is. We are making more on our local tax than on the state tax. We're probably down, and this is a rough number, so we can probably say it. We're down about $75,000 to $80,000 in state revenue from the marijuana tax that we don't get anymore as a result of the ballot measure. So that's kind of a guess of where you're at there. Other grants, you'll notice our transportation, some of our grants have gone down. We are moving away from South Lane Wheels, managing it. Currently, we manage the grants and oversee those grants that come from the state and federal government that go to us, and then we pass them through to South Lane Wheels. On July 1, LTD will start doing that for us instead of us. They're much more of an expert in transportation. They understand some of the things that have changed in the grants and the requirements in the grants regarding mass transit and in transportation services that have just gotten overwhelming for us to try to manage those pass-throughs. So we'll be switching that July 1. So you'll see here, and you'll see in the community development department, some reduction in those 5311,
5310
federal and state monies that they get in grants. So we won't be managing those anymore. Other than that, we do have some loan proceeds shown in the general fund there at the very bottom, $125,000. That's to continue to replace another 2 police cars, maybe 3 if we're lucky, but that's to buy two or 3 if we can really stretch it, and outfit them completely, get them ready for service.
Yes. What's the South Lane School District 50,000? What's that?
That's for our SROs, so the school resource officer. Okay. We're hoping that because the program will start back up in September, that we'll actually be able to do it and have an SRO.
It dropped during the...
It dropped as well during the pandemic. There wasn't any school going on. It's kind of hard. Why do you need an SRO for Zoom stuff? And then we've had some challenges just staffing wise, so we haven't been doing strong service. We should be this year probably getting about 25,000 from them instead of the 50. Anything else on there? Our BLM Morale River Trail maintenance, that's a zero there, but we do have continued funding.
I'm not 100% sure why it's zero, because we have available to us in the next 2 years, 105, actually $95,000 is what I believe.
We put a portion of that into the reserve fund, as you recall, for the purchase of equipment, et cetera. And then I think the rest of it has gone into the bicycle
footpath
fund. So it's just a shift of where we're accounting for it at. And if that's incorrect, we can certainly make an adjustment.
Any other questions on the revenues? Expenditures, city council, they have a small budget to cover their costs of membership in those organizations, their professional dues. Those are the LRAPA, LCOG, National League of Cities, Oregon League of Cities, and then their education and funding. Education stuff's picking back up. The conferences are coming back, and they're able to go to some of those.
The professional association dues, that's the combination of all?
Yeah. That's not one, that's about 5 or 6 there, yeah.
And actually, LRAPA's actually dropped at about half.
Right.
The other jurisdictions, Eugene, Springfield, and Lane County, several years ago had revenue problems, so they reduced their contribution. And so they wanted to just reset it at the new low. And I said, well, if that's the case, then it needs to be per capita at that new low. So we're actually about half what we were paying. So about 5,000, I think.
Yeah, and actually what happened is, as well as they sent us the invoice for that, and we've already paid next year's invoice in the current year. So, so we'll be down a little bit below the 25, but we'll be over it this year. So,
what do we get for that?
Well, we have a seat on the board, and so LRAPA actually leverages state and federal monies, so EPA and DEQ funds that come to LRAPA. They do, well, the biggest thing right now is Oak Ridge. Oak Ridge had reached non-attainment. So for particulate PM2.5, which is particulates that are so small they can actually absorb straight into your lungs. In our area, wood smoke is the primary driver of that. And so we have monitoring stations throughout the county, including in Oak Ridge. And they've also received these TAG grants to actually do a lot of work at, providing firewood that's dry, and having both a technician from LRAPA and their police able to look at opacity coming from stoves so that they're, reducing that. They've done a lot of ductless heat replacements for wood stoves and or newer wood stoves and the other ones, pellet stoves. And so, that's been a primary focus, but in Eugene, Springfield, there's also ozone monitoring and toxics, so air toxics. There's also a new program from the state called Cleaner Air Oregon, and stop me if I'm getting too deep in the weeds. But there's a lot of things that LRAPA does. One of the advantages over just using DEQ is that monitoring. And so even DEQ said they would not be able to do the same amount of monitoring. And the advantage for us too is that we now, because we're maintaining our air quality in such a good fashion, we actually can incorporate new business as necessary under Title V, which are the major polluters, or the ACDP, which are the air contaminant discharge permits, which are the lower but still permitted folks.
And they handle the programs, the asbestos
permitting
and other things too, and monitor those things that go on within the community.
And outdoor burning, and actually there's a lot of compliance for that.
Because aren't they the only agency in Oregon?
They are.
So
the only one
short of DEQ.
They're
so
used
who's
to
doing everybody else's?
DEQ.
Yeah.
And there used to be 3. There used to be one in the Gay Falls area and one up in the Portland area, but all have rolled into DEQ.
Substantial savings for those that use the permitting process and faster than doing it through DEQ. Yeah.
I was going to say that my experience with businesses that have to use DEQ versus LRAPA, they're going to say that LRAPA is much friendlier. It's quicker to process the permit. In fact, we have a business that's considering looking hard at our community and was very pleased to hear that LRAPA would be the agency that they would be working for their permitting, because their experience down south in Medford did not go too well with DEQ. So there is some level of improvement in process permits and satisfied emissions permits locally.
Yeah, and they've worked with a bunch. I mean, Seneca's, plant has some of the best controls in the nation. And, so they work with them and part of getting set up, they had some nitrous oxide emission violations, but they had to turn those off to be able to test the other pieces of it. So LRAPA really works with industry to make sure that they're meeting our air quality needs, without being overly onerous.
Any other questions in City Council? The next department is the City Manager's Department. The City Manager, the Assistant City Manager, we're changing his title to Assistant City Manager. Changes so that it fits better on a page and lines. And the City Recorder is in this department. Any questions there? Finance Department, this is where we handle all of our finance. Works Department, we deal with all the utility billing, all the accounts payable, all those services come through the budget process. Audit expenses are there. You'll notice the audit expense has gone up. We're anticipating significant more costs associated with the grants. We'll have a single audit, which is an expensive extra tool you have to go through, getting a huge amount of federal aid and assistance. Luckily, the ARPA funds, they removed that requirement for ARPA funds, so you didn't have to do a single audit for those, but the EDA grant that we'll have for Main Street will have that. If you have youth that are interested in possible future jobs, and they may be in college, there is a desperate need for auditing firms and auditors in the state of Oregon, as well as throughout the country. So put a pitch in there. That's also raising the costs and huge delay in getting audits done, as well as the number of single audits that are out there. It's just auditors are really busy and there are fewer of them. So anything, you'll notice the computer software and support is significantly up. That is up. We're buying some software to help us manage it, the grant stuff. We have a $5 million grant over a couple of years. We want to get some software that's actually going to take care of that and account for that, so we can have a better experience with the single audit process.
Also debt. And they have new GASBs out that dictate to us what we have to do for leases. And it's not, I think of a lease as leasing a vehicle or something large like that, and it's not that. It can be as much as the software subscription that we have that will count as being a lease. We have to deal with it in a specific way within our audit. So I'm looking at various softwares. We'll see what can fit, what doesn't fit, but we're going to try to get both the debt software as well as the grant management software that tracks it from beginning to end, and will spit out reports for us that's simpler for the auditor to follow as well.
Councilor Urban.
Yeah, related to that software, is that just like a subscription base for the time that you're managing, or is that something that you have and you can leverage? And
it's subscription based per year.
Per year, annual subscription.
So you could at some point say, oh, it's not necessary anymore. We don't have any large grants. We could go back to doing it in the Excel spreadsheet. So.
Counselor Fleck?
Is this software that then will integrate with our current software, or does it replace all of our software?
No, the other software stays. This would be a,
And that's Springbrook, isn't it?
yes, Springbrook is what we use currently.
Or does this include a setup fee? A cartograph, there was a huge setup
Oh,
fee
yeah.
first, and then the annual was
Right,
lower.
haven't got to that point yet to be able to negotiate it, but yes, there would be some sort of onboarding that there'd be an expense for. And we hopefully minimize that as much as possible.
Anything else in finance? Our community services department. This is the operation of the community. Teresa and Jessica are there. They handle our contractual services for the operation of the Highway 99 site is funded out of this. It's the ARPA contractual services, the 264. That's the remaining portion of ARPA funds that were set aside for the operation of the shelter and facilities there. We also have contractual services with South Valley Athletics. We're trying to work through programs with them so that they coordinate with the library and do programs there as a part of the agreement with them.
Is the office and the community center part of that, or is that like a?
That's part of the whole agreement with South Valley Athletics, yeah.
But it's not part of the team. That's
no. Community promotions. This is the location where probably most of the requests that you heard from earlier, this is maybe taken out of and funded from. Chamber of Commerce is 35,000 there. That is a 1 percentage point of our 4% room tax. When the city originally put our room tax in place in 1982, I believe it was, 81 or 82, it was a 3% room tax. And then the businesses and the hotels and the chamber came to the city and said, hey, please, let's do another 1% that would then be dedicated for visitor information and helping the chamber do the visiting promotion and tourism stuff. As a part of that, it was approved by the hotels and everything. And so it went from a 3% to a 4%. That's why they get that dedicated funding there specifically for the chamber. It's at $45,000. It's a 1 percentage point. We've budgeted it a little high just in case we get good transient room tax revenues coming in. We're not sure how that's going to work. Currently, we've switched from Eugene collecting all the transient room tax for all of the communities in the county. And Eugene decided they didn't want to do that anymore. The legislature changed the rules. And Eugene wanted to go to have the Department of Revenue doing it. And so we've also worked with the state, and the Department of Revenue is doing it now for us as well. Eugene was doing it. We got reimbursements. We got distributions from the transient room tax every month. And it was 60 days behind, or 30 days behind. 30 days behind, but every month you got a disbursement. With the state doing it now, we get it quarterly, and it's after, and it'll be behind 60 days from the quarter that closed. So it's quite a gap. We just got our first distribution. It was good, but it was only for October, November, and December. And so we haven't gotten anything for 2023 yet. That should be coming in July. So we're getting back on that cycle. Once we get on the cycle, it'll be comfortable, but it's getting squared away there and trying to get that taken care of.
So I used to know this, but I can't remember exactly how it works. So the county takes it all in from our hotels here, motels here, or we get just
This is just ours, and the county has a transient room tax as well, and they distribute that to the jurisdictions in the county, and then also pay for Florence's event center and things like that.
So the Village Green being closed is.
It's actually we're seeing revenue coming in higher than when the Village Green was open, and I think that's because the rates have gone up. The Village Green rates weren't the greatest in the last few years. And so we're actually collecting more in room tax than we did when the Village Green was operating. Hopefully, and the owners of the current property are working to try to get another hotel or management firm to come in and run their portion of the facility there and operate a hotel, and then that would bring it up even more. The county then takes their transient room tax and divides it out, and then it goes to the communities as a rural, and that's the rural tourism grant projects there in the budget. We get about $34,000, $35,000. That has to go for specific things that put heads in beds. So it has to pay for things that bring people to the community. Typically, we're helping the chamber and paying for brochures. We do a few other projects. We did, we put some money to the bowling tournament that's going on right now and providing some incentives and some opportunities for them to do other things outside of bowling and doing that and promoting the community. And we've also paid for some of the materials in the Travel Lane County magazine and in the Travel Oregon magazine. We've done those out of there.
Video too.
Yeah, and we also did a video at the airport, right? We did the video at the airport during the World Championships, highlighting Cottage Grove as well there. And that's probably something we'll continue to do. And/or we may, Georgia and I are currently working on trying to get some TV promotion going as well as a part of the Travel Lane County, the Cascades, Eugene Cascades and Coast promotion that they're doing too. So
The movie Walking Trail too, didn't you?
yeah, some of the walking trails, some of the other brochures for the bridges and things like that, they come out of this as well. And the film trail stuff we did out of the rural tourism too, because it brings people in from out of the area.
And we've been seeing text on Airbnb, but I don't know where it goes. I just know they take it.
It comes to us. It goes
I'm assuming it goes to the county.
There's 1% that goes to the state. The state has a 1% transient room tax now as well. That's relatively new. Dennis.
So the room tax, I'd like to go back to that. We have a lot of trucks that stay overnight. Do we get anything from that?
I don't think we get anything from the trucks that stay overnight because they don't pay anything there.
Well,
they pay for showers, but we don't have a shower tax.
That's how they get around it, isn't it?
Yeah.
They charge for shower.
$12 for a shower, and yeah.
So is there any way that we can?
Now, we do get it from the RV parks. So we get it from the Masonic Trail, the Masonic Park. We get it from the Village Greens Park that's still there, the recreational vehicles that are there. Now, only for the ones that are in the 14-day cycle. If they go longer than that, then it's not a transient room tax anymore.
I still would like to see if some vehicle where we get money from all those trucks that stop every night.
Yeah.
Seems unfair because they use a lot of our facilities, they use the roads and all that, but yet they don't pay anything.
So the roads, SDCs, right? Because that's on trips. So we get the funding.
Do we? Okay.
That way.
Well, that's only during the construction or in the development. And we also don't get gas tax or motor vehicle tax on the trucks that stop there either, and buy fuel at the stations. Because the state then takes it, and then supposedly that's part of the highway apportionment that we get back from the state, that it covers some of that cost. But the number of times we've rebuilt the corner there in front of the Vintage Inn, it has more than taken care of any of the money we get from the state to cover the truck traffic. So we have a steel plate under the sidewalk now, and they're still hitting the curb up there at the Vintage Inn and chipping it all to pieces. So we'll just see how long it works with the steel plate under the sidewalk.
Also, Irvin, that would be part of a tough, potentially. Yeah. Trips for day.
But yeah, and that's one of the things that an ad hoc committee, I think, can we do anything? Is there some way that we could try to find a way that's not prohibited under state law to generate some additional revenue and resources there?
Where I was coming from, and it just seems like we're losing.
Yeah.
Shower tax.
A shower tax. That could get odiferous in the community.
For the South Valley Farmers Market, is this the $5,000 that we were asked for in addition to the $3,000, or is it just
going to 5? Yeah, going up to 5. right?
Yes.
That's how we were assuming it was good to add 2,000 onto it. Singing Creek, we put a 0 there. Last year they were 1870. The others that asked aren't in the budget. Do want to explain, and I think they can answer some of this too. We do a substantial amount of support for BMD. It's not money, but we provide them the generators and the fuel. We provide them the golf carts. They use the parks and everything free. They use the stage for free. We set it up. We go and pick up the barricades and bring them, and we return them. We give them all of our barricades that we can spare, and then the extra ones are the ones that we rent, and they reimburse us for those. So we do a substantial amount. I think the generators alone are $20,000 plus that we provide to BMD. So there is a lot of support for BMD that the city does. Our park, we spent a lot of money after BMD trying to bring it back because generally it's dead, and we have to really water and aerate and try to get it back so that it's green again after BMD. So there's a lot of stuff we do put in.
Do you have some way to evaluate the in-kind services that the city is providing to BMD? I think it would have helped him understand that we are helping.
Yeah, and we've explained that over and over.
Oh,
okay. We need to do a little more of, hey, here's the dollar amount of what that really is and stuff. So
both sides.
Yeah.
Surprised he didn't know that.
Answer that, if I can get my staff to log in their time into our actual program, we'll be able to quantify exactly what that is. So we have rates for the equipment, we have rates for each employee. If they work, we have 6 employees come in on Saturday, they get 4 hours because they're setting up all the traffic control signs.
That's huge.
Blocking streets off, those different things. So we can do that if I can just get the information to the program. But it is substantial what we do. It's not.
Yeah, that's important to log that, I think, for the city to know. It's an expense.
I was under the impression that we had gone back later after the budget season last year and given $10,000 to Looking Glass. Did you go back and find it after we chatted?
Yeah, and there was a vote and it failed.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. I remembered something.
There was a lot, and we went back and looked, and there was some discussion, and actually watched the tape or listened to the tape, trying to, okay, what happened? And yeah, there was a vote, and then there was an amendment, and then it wasn't, and it did fail with the budget committee. So.
Well, I knew it did in the budget committee.
But the council didn't do it either. We went back to the resolution number.
2080.
Yeah.
We actually adopted a supplemental budget in October.
Yeah.
And it was not there.
Yeah, it's not in that. So, yeah.
Thank you. The symphony, wasn't that donation funded?
Yes, it's in 2 places. This is the amount that we've put in case the city needs to cover some of the donations, but in the actual trust funds, back in the trust funds, we have the funding for the symphony back there in donations. So the donations would come into the trust fund and then would be used for the symphony.
So this is trust fund.
This is general fund money right here, covering in case the donations don't quite make the 27 or 25 that we cost. Actually, we got it down last year. Last year it was 21 something. So we've done it enough times that we've got the cost of doing it down considerably. Yeah.
So you think it'll be covered?
We think it'll be covered. We're hopeful, and we're doing some fundraising right now. We're going out to businesses. We're going out to groups. So if you want your name on the bleachers, there's a price. If you want, so we're trying to create opportunities for people to really be out there and promote this and be a part of it. So we're hoping that we don't end up like Roseburg. Roseburg doesn't have them come anymore because they couldn't raise the money to do it.
That request for funding just went out today, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So if anybody does want to help, if you want your name on the bleachers or if you want on the signs or whatever in the park or banners, let us know. Talk to Shauna. She's doing that.
You're doing the tables as well?
We're not doing the tables. The tables that's one of the areas that just was really, really hard.
It's $500 a pop.
They would need hot dog down there too.
Yeah. No, I sat there a couple times.
And
But it's good.
we're hoping that we can do it this other way,
920.
right through
It's a Monday.
opportunities.
I want to say it's July.
July 24th, Monday, July 24th is when they're scheduled to be here. Should be, and
At Bohemia.
Francesco is still the conductor, and I think he'll be in one more season, and then he's going to be out there in the process of selecting a new conductor right now, a music director, and then he'll cycle out and travel on to other places, and that's what they do.
Star Wars for one more year.
2 more, yeah, this year, and then the next year is Star Wars and John Williams stuff, and then who knows what the next one will bring. So July 24th.
So, Chair, would this be the time to recommend supporting some of the additional requests? Well, I would like to move that we support the Cottage Grove Carousel's request for the feasibility study.
Second? A second?
I'm sorry, how much is that?
Well, their request is $5,000. My proposal's the motion is 5,000. I could be amenable to a friendly amendment.
Yeah, I guess. I'm really concerned about what we have available. Just as an overarching, I would really having a time trying to figure out the community impact and what we'll need and what will need to be sustained and what things go on. My initial thought is to just minimize, still support some things, but minimize what goes out so we have as much to work with on core services. But I would love to hear discussion and there's wisdom in council.
I'm curious what the feasibility study, what will we gain from that? Will you get a plan to how we're going to move it from where it is now to somewhere else, and that kind of things will be addressed?
Well, all I'm going off is the letter, but it's my understanding, like what they're looking for, feasibility study to leverage other grant opportunities. So in order to apply for grants to like put it to do capital planning for where it needs a permanent home, it's not going to be in King Estates wine cellar forever. They could do this feasibility study and understand how many people would it bring in, what would the revenue look like, where could it go. Mm-hmm. I think it's like a catalytic. I see it as a catalytic starter, and hopefully it's within the city limits because we need it to be the Cottage Grove Carousel still.
Absolutely.
I don't know if Richard, you have more information.
And you were right on point. That's exactly what the feasibility study is to look at is, what other amenities do they need to have to make it function and be sustainable? How can they move into that mode? Do they need to have a restaurant? Do they need to have other services or activities or a party room? Or, what other things might make it more feasible? And locations, what kind of locations that need to be in the community? So those are all things that would be included in that feasibility.
There was a location. They had a location there by the Taco Bell, and that got sold, and they didn't come up with the funding for that.
Yeah.
That was their first choice.
And what they're finding is, in order to get that funding, just like Councilor Drew said, they need that feasibility so they can go to other grantors and say, hey, here's what it's feasible. This is where we're moving. It's not quite the business plan, but it's laying out how they're going to get to that business plan, that they can get those other funding sources and or have those resources available that they know, hey, when something does open, whether it's a building or a piece of property, they can jump on it and try to get some funding going.
Right now, I think that the money is the problem. They had the place for it. They just didn't have the money or the donation for it.
I think I like the idea. I think I would really feel more comfortable if they said they had 3 quotes from different, vendors saying we can do a feasibility study for X. This seems like it's a little ill prepared at this point, so I'm a little reluctant to jump in. I mean, I certainly like the idea, but I feel like we're just kind of throwing an amount out there without any sort of research or.
Right. I agree.
Mr. Stewart?
But I made a call to Mary Bosch, Market Tech, who's doing our feasibility study for downtown. She was the one that shared with me that the cost to do a feasibility study for the carousel would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $7,500 to $10,000. But she can do it. She was going to do a little research. There is a historical agency that does feasibility studies that might fit better for this carousel because it is historic in nature, the age of it and everything. So I'm pretty confident that that's an correct number. Architect could do it for that, but she thinks that she might have a better fit for an organization to do it. And I would just add that as a foundation that does give grants to projects, it gives a lot more comfort if there is studies like this and you understand what the success it's really hard sometimes to listen to proposals when there's a lot of passion from people. I mean, they're going to make this thing go, you know, getting a independent third party to really put together a business plan, show the feasibility of it, gives a lot more comfort to be giving money to a project like this. So it is important.
Have they identified someone to do the feasibility study? That seems like the kind of linchpin.
That's why I just shared. I called and talked to Market Tech. They could do it.
Oh, okay.
And they're doing the research to see if this other firm might be able to do it. That might be a little better fit. So I'm sharing that there is a company that would do it for the price range that was proposed.
Oh, Councilor Savage.
I really like this idea. It sounds like the $5,000 is coming under what it could potentially cost. So they've got some skin in the game here too. But could we put this in contingency so that the council makes the decision? That'll give these folks time to come up with an actual document saying, this is what we're going to go with, this is what we want. And then we've kind of got it in limbo right here, but we can really make that final decision later.
You wouldn't need to put it in contingency. That's probably where it's coming out of.
Okay, got it. So I would love to move forward with this, but I too would like some documentation that says this is what it's going to cost. I wholeheartedly believe that it's likely going to cost more than what they're asking, but let's just get it in writing.
And I'll tag on to that. I think that's a good idea because I think those kind of issues are what the elected officials should be deciding, the citizens, not the volunteers that are in here doing it. And the other thing is the city given them any money in the past for anything? Because I don't see it on in the budget. So you guys never contributed anything?
Way back. I believe, when the carousel first got here, we actually paid for the architects to actually draw up a carousel building and do that. That was in 96.
Okay.
So, or earlier. And that's completely changed, but
you weren't born yet, so.
I was in maybe 6.
You're trying to follow. Well, I know that the carousel's been ongoing for a long time.
Right. And it's, you know, to be honest, it's had its struggles over the years, and a lot of people in the community, there wasn't anything really tangible. Is it really going to happen? If you've been to the King Estate building and ridden it on the nights where they're open, when they're testing it, and are guinea pigs to see if it stays working and doesn't collapse on you, it won't, but to make sure the gears are working right and everything. It's fun. I mean, it's really, it's now gotten to the point where people have touched it, smelled it, seen it, and it makes it a little more realistic that it's actually going to happen. So what we would suggest is but if the council does it, it doesn't need a supplemental. They can put it in then. So the council could put it in and put the line item and everything in when it goes to them in June, at the end of June. So that would be.
There is a carousel in Colorado that started with just somebody's heart, some vet started doing it as a therapeutic thing, and it just took off, and people love it. And it's a great, people every year come from all over to go to Nederland, Colorado to see this carousel, because it's all handmade and made by this guy. And this is has the same value. I think it would be a real draw. I think
Seaside, Salem, they have carousels. So.
There's a whole carousel passport, and Cottage Grove is on it.
Yeah. So you have a motion.
Motion. Do we have a second? You can ask
Can I
a question.
ask a question? So I kind of feel the same thing about all the other items that are, people are asking for funds that the city council, I think, should make those decisions. So I'd second a motion that we put all those things back on the council to decide what they want to contribute. And that's my thought on it. But
I second that.
we had a motion.
I was going to say.
Motion.
We have a motion on the floor already, but it doesn't have a second. So
Okay.
that one,
unless somebody wanted
Guys for
Friendly amendment.
Yeah, make the amendment.
but we do have a motion and a second now. So.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
That motion was for
All of
bring
the
it all.
requests go to the council as after you guys.
Enumerated.
Yeah, we'll put together more. Is there anything that you want the council, and this would be something for the councilors to chime in, what do you want when it comes to you that you need in order to make those decisions? And kind of a loaded leading question on one of them, I think, but.
Financials.
Yeah, I want financials for that significant a request. I want to see costs going back to the balance sheet, for both the foundation and EMD. So both the 501c3 and the C4.
Okay.
I wouldn't want it to be more than $20,000 because I don't think the city should be footing half the bill for it, but that is my opinion. 25% is really easy to get matching grants for.
And if you look at a lot of the line items here in our community promotions, I mean, Relief Nursery, $1,500. And we've asked them, do you want more than that? And they say no, because the $1,500, they leverage that. They turn that into tens to 20s to thousands of dollars.
You say you have support of the city.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's where I think some of our stuff would be. But yeah, we can get some information out to them so they can start putting some things together to bring back in to the council. You've got the farmers market did a full budget. I think there's had the full budget, everything there. Do you need anything else from them? What they've given you? Singing Creek, I think, had a good revenue and expenditure budget in theirs. Food Hub will bring you the information about the grants, because we'll get that figured out. If there's enough of that grant, can we get it and turn it in? Then it'd just be, hey, we've got the grant funds and we put it in, and what we need to do to answer the grantors for those. So
we know we can have that finalized by the time.
we hope so. We've been trying to get that squared away.
Councilor Irvin.
So is it a possibility for help for these organizations like Bohemian Mining Days to possibly apply for grants, like some help backing from the city to go through that process? Okay.
We got rid of Southland Wheels. Now we're going to do pass-through grants for others.
I was going to, in addition to financials, since they're going to have this opportunity to rewrite and tailor it, is to really make the appeal of why, you were looking at the comparables of what the city's foundation is and what the core services are, why make the case for why money should be taken away from those and directed to these programs, make that impact case.
And how does it affect our mission statement as a city? Is this?
Is it tie into one of those?
Yeah.
Is it possible for us as a city to get rough numbers for the things that we donate in kind to BMD
Yeah,
by the time
we
they come back?
we can try to pull some.
Get some numbers of what we already do historically.
And attendance numbers.
Yeah, attendance numbers for BMD are really tough because there's so many entry points. And that's one of the challenges they've had over the years is, I mean, you don't have a closed-in location. I know Traveling County last year or the year before, they did some, I think they had somebody there kind of questioning, doing a poll to see, and I think they came out that a majority of people that are there are actual local residents, that B&B doesn't bring in a lot of people from outside.
That was going to be my question.
Yeah.
If we don't know how many, then we probably don't know where they're from either.
Yeah. It's a great thing for the local community, and we bring some people in from Cresswell and Eugene and Springfield, but we're not seeing anybody staying in beds for it. We're, those kind of things that really do then put more into the community.
I do know it brings people home.
Yeah.
People come home for BMD for sure. It's a tradition.
My kids come home for the chicken.
Yeah. Absolutely.
For the carousel folks, I think because of my background, like I understand the value of a feasibility study for other grantors. But if they could come back with more information about like what's the value of a feasibility study, how much could it leverage, what is it actually going to look at, some of those details, so we don't have to assume, and it's clear.
For BMD, I would like to see a fundraising plan. I know I'm not on the council, but it seems like their long-term financial plan is to ask this group.
Or shame us into it.
And that's not I guess it is a fundraising strategy, but it is a very secure one.
Has Traveling County given them any kind of monies?
I'm not sure. Traveling County doesn't have a lot of funding to give out. They do promotions and things like that, and so they're listed in the travel guide as some of the community festivals and things that are around.
They do that. Okay.
They do some of that promotion piece, but some of it we pay for, some of it, and we've paid for the ads for BMD in the Traveling County magazine too, just about every year.
Do you think they'll provide a list of donors?
No, and I don't think we'd ask. Yeah, amounts would be great, but I don't think we'd get the list of donors.
No.
And a point in their letter, they said that they would, like, as part of this letter, they were supplying a list of donations over a period of time, and it's not included.
It's not included.
So there are missing pieces
That is
they
something
submitted.
we can ask them for specifically. I mean, we kind of did, but let's make sure.
The 990 will list donations.
Yeah,
we'll give you the amount. It won't tell you who.
Back till 19, so it's not helpful right now. So that doesn't post-COVID.
Some of the numbers had some variances just since the grant out on May 1st. A couple of them, difference of $1,000 or more. So be interested to see what the time frame is and what donations came in that time frame.
And I don't know if you can get some kind of count of people that come through or something like that.
Yeah, we have, kind of, so briefly what we do have. We've been doing crowd counts starting last year, but we didn't have a full season. So it just is, it's not as presentable, but I think it's we said put into other figures to account for the rest of the season to give that picture. And I think that would be valuable. Because yeah, we've been doing monthly crowd counts and we're also vendor sales data.
And that's another one for BMD too, because their vendors are supposed to report sales data, and some of their fees are associated to that too. So that'd be another piece.
That would be nice, yeah.
And in the past, the vendors have had to pay a certain percentage of their proceeds in, and I didn't hear him say that. I think when Charlene asked if there's revenue received, and he said no.
Yeah, something I mean.
They just got the meat pie place from Scandi Fest that have lines out?
They don't charge admission, but they do, the community does charge parking.
So the $10,000 that's in there for the symphony, if it's in there as a placeholder, just in case, we could fund everybody else without the BMD request if we didn't need that.
Yeah, and
So it wouldn't be taking from somewhere else. We wouldn't need it. I know it's thinking ahead,
Right.
unlike certain things for the future. But if it's not needed, it wouldn't have to come out of anywhere else.
Yeah.
And could some of the rural grant projects be directed towards any of these items?
Probably not. I mean, they don't quite meet the requirements under Lane counties. You've got to create opportunities for people coming and staying is what they're supposed to be doing. And typically if they're coming for BMD and it's only, basically it's Thursday night, Friday and Saturday now, are people coming to spend multiple nights here for it? And that's generally not the case. They come for one day and then they're gone.
I did have a question on the South Lane Wheels. If that's going to be as of July 1st, is that 5,000 going to get reallocated to LTD?
That's money that goes to South Lane Wheels as the nonprofit organization.
Okay.
So that would
So
still go. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else on community promotions? Police Department, police operations. This is our operations fund for the police department. We're anticipating getting everything up and full. We put out the recruitment for the police chief today. If you know of any top level law enforcement officials that are out there that are interested, we have some that we've been working over the last couple of months that the chief has been grilling and encouraging to apply. Looking for some of those, and we're excited about some of those prospects. Like Captain Marsh is a great example of what potential we have. Getting him on, we'll embarrass him a little bit when we interviewed him in the interview, the chief and I, after he went through all the other panels of interviews. We asked him point blank, why would you want to come here? We've had all these problems. We've had stuff going on. Why do you want to come here? And he basically said, you guys have done all the hard work. It's cleaned up. I'm excited to come here because I'm going to be a part of building a department what we want it to be. Because we've got a slate and we've got people that are ready to work hard and do what needs to be done. And he wants to be a part of that. And we're looking for that in the chief as well. So should be exciting. We've fully funded all of our positions as we had last year. We actually have 2 captains in this budget instead of just 1. So that'll be exciting. There's 1.7 here. The other 0.3 is in communications or back in the special revenue fund.
Richard, is the same true for the chief to make it full time?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the 0.8 is here. The 0.2 is back there in the operation communications. Yeah.
I hope I have whole people.
We're going to whittle off a part of them and say.
Is that because there's federal funds or something for the communications part of that?
It's because, there is some state money that comes from the 911 tax, and that has to be counted for as special revenue. So if you'll look at the end on the last page of the general fund on 102, we're actually transferring over into our communications $747,000 out of the general fund into that fund to make that budget balance. And that can only do the 911 dispatch center and communication stuff. Dennis.
Under that 71,000, 300,000, quite a bit over the previous years. What is that for?
Which one?
The jail. It's the contractual.
Oh, the contractual services, yeah. The 300,000, we have worked out a deal with Springfield, actually operate the jail, their jail, and give us beds there. And so right now we have an agreement, and we have a contract with them. And for $139 a night if we put people in, but we've got an agreement. 131, sorry, $8.
We get a room tax.
That's a discount. No, because some of them are longer than 14 days.
You told us that.
In Springfield.
Go ahead, Dennis.
On our tour, you explained that, and I thought that's what that
Yeah.
covered, but I wasn't sure.
And that gives us 10 beds for $250,000 is what we've worked out already. We're going to be playing with that. We might be asking for 5 instead, and then have the option to buy 5 more as we need them. So we'll watch what happens with our inmates as we need to move them around and do that. We don't want to pay for 10 beds and only use 4 regularly. So it'd be nice to save a little bit of money on doing that.
Had one and then we'll collect you.
So, so we won't be using the jail at all then, even for minor offenses where you guys had a working and they were doing work? Okay.
No, yeah.
Have you done, I'm assuming you guys did, but I'm just curious as the numbers as to the difference between having our own jail and what it's costing us per bed. Have you guys looked at that?
Yeah, and one of the things, there are 8 municipal jails, well, now there's 7, 8 municipal jails in Oregon. 4 of them are in Lane County. And the reason for that is in the past, Lane County Jail has not been providing the service. They're like, oh, the election's over, we can talk about it. We don't know what it did, but they've made some significant improvements, but we've also seen Springfield build their jail. Our jail is okay under the state regulations and requirements, but when you start looking at all the insurance requirements and all the other liability issues that are associated with it, we don't meet all of the things that the jail operators and the Sheriff's Association with their jail commanding program are the best practices. We'd have to have a nurse or some kind of healthcare professional. We'll let the chief go more into some of the details.
Yeah, I can just, in real dollars, if we had decided to move forward with the jail, I would have budgeted at a minimum $500,000 as opposed to $250,000. And I'm not sure that would have gotten us where we needed to be to provide the medical care that's required. Frankly, was not being provided.
Yeah.
So.
Dennis?
And I agree with what you just said, because I've dealt with Lane County and Springfield. I've been inside, not as an inmate.
And it's safe here.
I've seen the difference and the cost and liability for providing medication and that sort of thing for people is just astronomical. So I personally, I'm glad you're going to Springfield rather than Lane County.
Yeah, and
I would encourage you, I'm sorry, one more comment. I know that you all have toured our facility downstairs. If you have free time, connect with Springfield and go look at that facility. It is a eye-opening comparison between the two.
Absolutely.
And quite frankly, the 250 is a bargain. I think it's a great bargain. And that would, if we go the 250 at 10 beds, those 10 beds are ours. And so if we do the 5, they're ours. And if they fill up and need to bump people out, they don't bump ours. They have to bump their own. And so those are our beds, whether we use them or not. But we want to try to use them.
What about, sorry, anybody else? Transportation, so you got someone here, you're taking them, so staffing for that, is that, I know that with the ambulance, anyway, when we have to take people north, we're down a unit and 2 bodies, and you guys are going to be taking your own up there, correct?
So, yeah, but not on probable cause of arrest. So if we arrest somebody on the street and they need to be transported, they'll go to Lane County. They may not stay there long, but that's where they'll be transported if they meet the lodging criteria. Springfield will only take adults in custody that are under, have been sentenced by the judge or under a commitment order. So there's different scenarios for that, but yes, in those situations, then we would then transport those folks to Springfield. We're already doing that. So it's really not going to change for us moving forward as our staffing improves. We'll absorb that a little bit easier, but it's important to keep in mind that if anybody that we arrest now that needs to go to jail, we have to take them basically same distance. So it's
And the wash for that is right now, if we were keeping our jail, we'd be doing jail checks every hour with our officers. So that travel cost, we're thinking it's going to be a wash or better than doing the hourly every hour, bringing an officer in off the street, come in and do the jail check and interrupt whatever they were doing and or feeding them and stuff like that. So.
And if they're on a call and they can't do the jail check, now we got a problem.
Yeah. Well, I know our guys are going to be glad they don't have to get up in the middle of the night because they're a bunch of babies. They don't want to come over here and check patients or check the jail in the middle of the night like they've done.
Understandably and frankly, that would not meet the legal requirement, does not meet the legal requirement for medical care. No offense to Lane's folks, but I mean, we have to provide a certain standard of medical care for adults in custody. We are not providing.
You'll see the $125,000 is here for motor vehicles. That's the loan proceeds that is in the revenue. Here's where it's expended out.
It also includes the upfit.
That's
Make it a police car.
the vehicles and then all the gizmos and gadgets and utility safety belt stuff that goes in there that makes them. Any other questions on police operations?
Your explanation on office supplies cracked me up.
Office supplies, you'll notice the office supplies in the past have been $2,500, $2,400. This year there's zero. As a result of all the work we've been doing with the police department, we discovered several closets and cabinets and places where office supplies had been purchased by various people in the department, not just one person. So we don't need office supplies for a number of years in the police department. If any of you would like to borrow some Sharpie pens, we have multiples of those. We were thinking actually of buying white patrol cars and having them go out and paint them with Sharpie pens. But yeah, we've got that under control and we'll have nothing in there for a while. So
I thought it was just because police officers can't write, but Sorry, it's not speaking in my house. I forgot where I was.
We've got some pretty nice things to say about firefighters too.
I know.
But yeah.
We're not in your budget anymore.
Yeah. We are too, yeah. Municipal court, this is the operations of municipal court. The first portion is the part where we have our municipal court judge and the court clerk. So the basic operations there, they are slow right now because we're just not feeding them clients, but that will change as we bring the police department back up, and we'll see that move up. Courts, municipal court support services. Oh, no, yeah.
Under that, I guess I'm a little befuddled here. You hand out fines, 151,648, but you only really bring in the 88,969. Why?
Because the state law has made it to where we really don't have a lot of teeth to get those. And we used to be able to have some teeth because they lose their license, and in order to get their license back, that was, the legislature said, no, that's not right, that's not fair. They took that away. Our last governor, when she left office, pardoned a whole mess of people. It cost us $14,000 in fines that were wiped off the books as a result of those carte blanche pardons. How many people was that? That was, I can't remember the number that Michelle told us.
There was a few.
Yeah.
This says 13 individuals, 8,405.
80. Okay, yeah. Yeah.
The discrepancy, just to add to that, you'll notice it tracks pretty consistently over the years. The fact of the matter is, a certain percentage of people that go to municipal court and are held accountable through fines just don't pay them. I mean, it's just, my experience is when that happens in every municipal court, it's just the cost of doing business So the courts actually, we've talked about alternative sentencing and different ways to hold people accountable. But it's not going to change that. It's just the reality.
John had a question earlier.
This may be relevant. I know the judge isn't here. I wondered if not operating our jail changes the way we are sentencing people for.
It will have some logistical issues associated with, like the chief mentioned, can't bring people in on the probable cause. If we're arresting somebody on the street, we can't put them in the jail like we would here and hold them until court. We can take them to Lane County and hopefully they might stay, but probably not. We're working on some of those things, and that's one of the things that he went and visited with Springfield about how can we, and that's the judge commitment and commit somebody before they basically get them arraigned, and so that they can put them in the jail and hold them until they have the actual trial. But we're working on some of those specifics that just need to be worked out as we make that change. So
one of the things I would hoping to see, or maybe in future years hoping to see is contractual services going up to be able to secure the mental health assessment position that's required to actually be effective with taking care of mental health cases. Like to see that in the budget and in pursuit of getting that. Would that be under the purview of the judge to make those decisions as it relates to that, or would that be that we would want to direct him in terms of policy?
yeah, I'm not sure where that would fit if it goes into Lane County Public Health and some of their services. They've got a contract now that they're working on the mobile crisis stuff and getting that out into the rural areas that'll help as well. But yeah, I don't know. We'd have to work on that one still.
I think the big problem is a lack of providers.
Yeah.
That's one of the challenges our court has had, is finding people that can do these commitment evaluations to determine whether somebody's fit to proceed with trial and aid in their own defense and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I would foresee if that problem got solved and it was something that it became an expense, it would probably go in the municipal court budget as just an expense of running the court, right? So here again, there's going to be a certain percentage of defendants that are going to need to have a health evaluation. That's just like a public defender. That's going to be the cost of the court.
Yeah.
And they're trying to do that now. The problem is they just can't. And that's a statewide issue. If you remember, Sheriff Farrell talked about that one. Mm-hmm. It's just a problem for everybody.
Yeah.
So it seems like if you got one, you could do an intergovernmental agreement and leverage it for the surrounding courts. Have the same issue statewide, since it's not being addressed on the state level.
Or Lane County do it and everybody shares, or yeah, something. Yeah.
So we had Danny and then Counselor.
So you can, and we do work with CGPD with mental patients or issues on a call, and we can transport, you can do a placeholder transport to the hospital, and the hospital has counselors on staff, and they can do some evaluations there. So we can deal with it that way. We can take them in the ambulance, but sometimes if they're violent, then we have to have an officer with us or restrain them.
And that's the
chemically restrain them too, but
kind of like the whole cahoots model would be on the ground dealing, not even having to go into the courts potentially, right? Saving all that cost. This was specifically for the constraints that are involved in what the judge can do to make a commitment versus having an evaluation done that is open beyond to actually get them into the state hospital. He's identified as a missing piece. So maybe we can talk later about the strategy there to bring it in, but it seems like such a critical piece.
Yeah. And we've got to work the state hospital piece as well, because when we've been successful and gotten somebody committed, we get a call from the state hospital, come get them, they're healed in 2 days. And that's not the case. And
ready to go get them?
Yeah, so
put them in jail.
Put them back in jail.
And Counselor Irvin, my husband's a public defender, so I have asked him about this. Well, if we did this like kind of plugged this one hole, what would happen? He said it wouldn't matter because the state hospital's full. Even if we got people, we were able to assess all these people, which there's not the labor, behavioral health, mental health specialists to assess people. The state hospital would be full, or they would say, oh, they've been restored, and they kick them back to the community. And also what the state is doing, the state has made it the county's responsibility to deal with the aid and assist population, the people who are unable to aid and assist in their own legal defense because they're not competent mentally. So it's just like this revolving door. I really appreciate you, like, what if we could do this? But it just doesn't stop the water from spouting everywhere else in the system that's so very broken. And then the people will just be kicked back to our community anyway.
So it's probably a good opportunity, as Councilman said, for an offline discussion, because Councilor Dre is exactly right. I have seen the system deteriorate in my 32 plus years, literally where it has just gone based on social philosophy and a direction of what service should look like and what it should be. And it's well-intentioned, but it has had significant and noticeable consequences over the years, and frankly has led us to the point we're at. And so it's really a statewide conversation that communities need to be having with their legislators, because it needs to be brought back into the center a little bit, where we have facilities to give people the inpatient help that they need. When I started my career in 12th and Damish State Hospital in Wilsonville was thriving and functioning. We just didn't have these issues in our communities. Now, it may not have been a slice of heaven there. I'm not suggesting that it was, but when they closed that, literally almost immediately we began to see the impact that it had in the communities around there, because those folks were released out under a new banner of they've been restored, or they've been whatever, and immediately we had started having these impacts.
And so,
it's unfortunate, but it really is a large-scale system issue that needs to be addressed by the state.
And so that's where I think it's really, really important, and keep drilling this into everybody's heads, that we need to be talking to our legislators, and not just ours, but the others, and saying, hey, you need to get back to taking care of this. Some of the hospitals had problems. They weren't quite humane, but I think it's even more inhumane where they dumped them on the streets and there's no services. And we need to really make that a message that gets heard over and over again to the state. So, yeah, not really a budget item, but.
Yeah, and just on a local level, I happened to attend the South Lane Mental Health gathering on Friday night, and I put that question to them: what can we do? We know there's a shortfall in services that you're able to provide. And I said, what could we do? And they go, housing. We can't get people to come, practitioners to come, because there's no place for them to live. So,
yeah. All loops together. So anything else on municipal court? We have court support services. This is for the portion of court system. I didn't want the public defender and the prosecutor, under his budget, because it doesn't look right. So this is where our prosecution services and contract services there are for that service. The next page, page 73, you'll notice there's zeros. This is a program that was dear. We really want to make it work, but it's just not working. And Kathy Kelty is our peer court assistant or coordinator right now. Her husband passed away just a few months ago. Yeah. And this is an opportunity where she's looking at going and visiting family and doing some traveling. And she's been a city employee for 45 years. Looking forward to some of those opportunities there. We've got this zeroed out, and my hope is that as we get the new chief on and the new chief work with the judge, and that we look at some other options and some other models of youth programs, that have moved from the peer court and the court kind of system to sort of justice system where you've got peers still working and teams working, but they're working in more of a collaborated approach with the youth that's in trouble or suspect, and working with them on creating plans and working together on doing things to make improvements. And they've seen some good success out of that. One of the other challenges we're having with this is we're not getting a lot of support from DYS, the Department of Youth Services. The numbers of cases that they return back to us just are not very good. And so we need to rethink and regroup. And so just because it's zeros right now doesn't mean that it's something by the end of the year, but we will have something going on.
Aren't we one of the longest running?
We are the last peer court in Lane County, and maybe the last one that's an official peer court type thing, one of the last ones in the state, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of heartbreaking to see. Yes. So, I mean, this has been around as long as I have.
Yeah, I think it's a refresh time is really what we need to look at, so. Moving away from police and courts into maintenance, into our public works. This is our maintenance budget for maintaining our buildings, parks, all the spaces and the 200 and some acres of open space and acreage in the city through maintenance crew in public works. Have a new dog park that should be opening later this summer. There by the high school. We just need to get the parking lot finished, and that's being developed through our Parks SDC fund, and so that'll be huge. It'll have parks, actually. There'll be a little dog park and a big dog park. Not little, but dogs, and keep them separate if they would need to be that way.
There's 3 items in here I just point out. Contractual services, we've experienced an increase in our HVAC maintenance activity twice a year, in the spring and in the fall. And then we also have an increase in our generator testing services. So just our regular contractual services have gone up. That's why you see that increase. Also down here at building maintenance, the same thing. We also rolled in, now that the Armory is coming on board, a lot of the general maintenance. Now that we're not doing capital improvements in the Armory as much, but the general maintenance, we rolled that into the budget. And then the final item down there I wanted to point out was we had significant cost monthly to manage the toilets at both the campsites and also the portable toilets at the 99 site. So and we've also experienced probably an increase in vandalism. So like right now we have a portable toilet over at Quainer Park because the women's bathroom door, like about 2 weeks after we put a brand new one on it, it got damaged. And so we're just using
We have cameras.
We are looking at permanent systems. We tried using the cameras, but they seem to disappear.
Our cameras have been stolen.
We have staff, they're available. They're not throwing it into their rounds to go check. But we've been kind of successful at Bohemian Park, catching some vandalism lately. And we think because of the tagging, some of the things are similar. We think it's the same people.
So we have portable toilets at 99. We don't have just regular bathrooms set up for them.
We got 2 portables out there, plus we're going to be opening 3 88 bathrooms. here next week. We're waiting on a few last minute items to come in. We're going to judge before we just take the portable toilets out to see if they're still needed. They're a little bit 50,000 units where everybody'd have to, at night, if you have to go to the bathroom, make a pretty good trek to get to those bathrooms. But we're going to try to monitor and see if we actually need those bucks.
But that wasn't going to come out of those ARPA funds?
Extending this in the maintenance. That's why we have a brand new line item for this expense.
All right, so there's a time, oh, sorry. Is it about this?
So, going back to where she was at, why doesn't it come out of the ARPA? Why should we provide that? Why shouldn't that, isn't that how that was set up? It's through ARPA?
The ARPA funds are being used to pay for the contractor that's running the project and actually operating the facility. And so the maintenance or the cost for toilets would be here. That money in the ARPA funds only is enough to cover the contracted, the third party that's running the service.
So if that goes away, are we going to have to be on the hook for the whole thing?
At the end of July in July 1 of 2024, we will have to close unless the state or federal government come through with the funding to help with the homeless.
How would that affect this 24,000?
This would go down as well. However, we probably would need to still have toilets out in parks and stuff because they'll be out.
That's when, July, did you say?
July 1 of 24. So the end of this proposed budget, we will no longer have funds to run the shelter site.
Okay, thank you.
Have a breakdown of how much it costs to put together the 99 site? Is it just all?
It's all over the place, but the purchase was 210. The remodel.
I'd have to look at what we've spent to get that to you.
Yeah.
I don't have that.
Yeah, we spent probably about $600,000 out of the ARPA funds to build the facility. The governor's money that she set aside to do homeless facilities and to provide services will not fund and operations of existing sites. You'd have to build a new site and spend the money out of the governor's funds to do that. She won't pay for existing sites to continue to operate.
Yeah, she really helped us out there.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And that's another one. We talk to legislators that, hey, this is a problem. And as I said in my budget message, this is one of those problems that the state and federal governments created, and through mental health, through other programs, through whatever. And because they could not solve it, they dumped it on local government.
So and effectively, it cost us $600,000 to build this and try to get our ducks in a row before other cities did. And
we're ahead of the game. We're making some success. There's some progress and things are happening. But I mean, at the end of the year,
unless it doesn't get funded, and
yeah,
we've wasted $600,000.
So the Mayor's Association has put together a proposal to the legislature and has been playing that and pushing that hard at the legislature for funding. And they've in their proposal, it's $40 per capita that the state needs to pay cities in order for us to run homeless facilities and get people in housing and take care of this. So with the $40 per capita, that'd give us over $400,000 that we could then use to run systems and take care of some of those needs and make our community a better place for everybody, because we'd be moving people into programs and getting the casework they need and everything like that. So they wouldn't be impacting us negatively like they are.
What do you think the chances are?
Not this legislative session, but the message is still there, and we need to continue to push that.
Well, it's 9:03.
Do we want to finish the general fund so that we want to, I mean,
Is everyone?
I guess my 2 cents, if we're going to carry on, I think we might as well stop. But I guess it's funny, I'm past my last flag, but I've been through it. I don't know if everybody else has, so I don't want to propose.
Because, I think the last few departments in here are pretty simple, and I think we could get through that. We want to take 5 minutes or 10 minutes and we can get through the rest of the general fund. Then we can start special revenue next. Okay. Engineering, as we've said, we don't have a city engineer, we don't have a civil engineer, but we do have our engineering coordinator or assistant, Sean and I is down there doing that for us. Contracting, you'll notice the contractual services of $35,000. That's for our engineer of record that does things for us. And then when we have specific projects, their costs for the third-party engineers then go into those specific projects. So this is just basically the oversight of our engineering firms that are helping us and doing some things in the community. Broadband services, this takes care of our fiber optics and our contractual services with LCOG to do our IT services. We have had a significant number of expenses in trying to take care of our cybersecurity. We can, if you look at some of the primary accomplishments and some of the things, EDR, endpoint detection and response that we've got going on. We've got our proof point. Some of the things don't make sense to many of us, but we are well on our way of protecting and taking care of the technology and the infrastructure that we have, broadband services and our IT services. There. Basically, it's our contractual services just continue to go up. We are doing monthly, and employees need to plug their ears, but we're doing monthly, if not twice monthly, phishing tests on our emails and other things going on within the city. So it's working, and we're continuing to monitor that. So be careful. Don't click on the.
Always on the side of it's real. Yes, Bert, it's real. It's hard to tell anymore.
It is getting harder to tell whether something is legitimate or not. So we're trying to be vigilant. We have a data system that every day, twice, it backs up everything on our system and sends it to an undisclosed location, 2 different undisclosed locations around the country, as well as having a backup here on it. Pretty amazing system. LCOG was actually using the system a couple of years ago, and they had their server crash, and they ran off of the backup for a year or 2 before they were able to get their other stuff fixed. And so it's a great system, but that's where we're at on that. That's part of the contractual services, yeah. Yes, everybody is on it, although the police department stuff there is some segregation there to satisfy the criminal justice information system requirements that the 2 systems can't share and you can't get across into them, but the same backups, the same things happen there. And we are, and this is under the communication, but our IT people are also rebuilding the PSAP, our public safety answering point, 911 center here. We're moving it from the front of the police department back into the back offices, so they won't be interrupted anymore by people coming to the counter. They'll have new equipment and all new systems in there with some security measures as well. So we will have one of the best PSAPs in the area. It will be a model for others. Our development, this is where economic development is. Notice all the zeros down there in the materials, and those are all of the different grants that we were working with South Lane Wheels with. That's how complicated it got with the different things that were going on. So those are all now moving to LTD and on July 1. We'll still have some things we have to do. So
End of the quarter to
yeah.
reports and such.
Yeah.
On the 5339 grant, that grant was for 244,800, and you show your that's ending at 122. 5339. That was for 2 buses.
A second bus grant.
Oh, our share.
That's where we're at.
Okay.
Yeah, because there was some extra costs there, and you guys are picking about South Lane Wheels is picking up that extra cost out of their money instead of what we had through the grant. Yeah. Anything you want to say, Faye, on development?
The only thing that construction services increased by about close to $8,000. We are hoping to set up work with OCOG and IT to establish our own GIS system here in Cottage Grove, be able to take all of our as-bills and maps and everything we have historically downstairs and be able to put them into the GIS system that will allow our staff to access them. Now that we're working with 2 engineering firms, it's going to be so much easier to be able to send electronic items and they'll be able to access it. That's really the only notable item in here. The rest of these are just regular grants we get through the government grant for historic grant items.
The other items to note are the Aerial Development Program, RAIN. We've added in here to do the $21,000 again for that. It was a 2-year program. We've done the 2 years. And there's also the $25,000 from the Woodard Foundation grant. If the Woodard Foundation grant doesn't come through, then we won't be spending the 21, unless they find some other grant funding to pay for that. Any other questions on development? Library services. And not a lot of change there at all. Continuing the operations there. A lot of the youth programs are taking off. The Daddy book program and the toddler lap reading time has taken off. We've had multiple sessions of those. I mean, some things it's taken a little while for people to want to come back out, and they're starting to come back out to the library and do that. And if you haven't gotten a new library card, you can get it and it can be on your phone. So you can use your phone to check out books and everything. You don't have to have a card anymore. So if you haven't been there, go to the library and check it out.
Is this number actually reflecting, we went from actual of 3,220 people to 300? Is that the attendance? So they head counts how many people come in?
Yeah, and there may have been some double counting back then. So we aren't doing the summer programs like we used to. Those are things that we're now partnering with South Valley Athletics to do and operate, because our librarians probably should not be taking people kayaking. Those kind of things happening, and we're trying to get that back into the youth programs or with those that are better skilled at handling that rather than librarians.
Okay.
And then our last in the general fund is our internal support department, more affectionately known as the non-departmental department. But the state did not like that name, so we changed it to the internal support. This is those things that are all that we can't squeeze into one of the other departments in the general fund. So our advertising, our insurance and bonds, labor negotiations are here because that can be something that goes over multiple areas. Our contractual services is primarily there for visioning or for other contractual things that we may have to do that carry across multiple departments or funds, generally just in the general fund though. And then we have our transfers. These are all our transfers from the general fund. We already talked a little bit about the South Lane Communications. That goes for the 911 PSAP. And we are not moving money into the Housing Assistance Trust Fund. It's time for the council to kind of look at that and evaluate that. We had it set up to work for 3 years. We have it fully funded right now. And under the program, it said when we reach a certain dollar amount, we don't put any more in until it goes down. But we have a number of projects that might be asking for some money coming up. So this would be we might see it go back down. And we might have to start doing the transfers again if the council wishes to continue to do that. Our transfer into the general reserve fund to help pay for some of those major capital things. And then our transfer of 400,000 EDA. This is the match that we had set aside from ARPA to go into the EDA and project for Main Street project. So,
I was going to make a comment about we only have 415,000 in our contingency, which I would like to make, but also it's kind of weird that in the previous 2 years, is that because it was in non-department fund?
Once you balance the budget and you've got actuals, those contingencies aren't there anymore because it's only actual expenditures. Okay. So it becomes a carryover.
So it becomes a zero because you didn't expend any funds.
Right. And we don't expend out of the contingency or the unappropriated. We can't spend the unappropriated at all. That's something you can't touch. But the contingency can be spent and it moves into the line items where it's spent at. So
By resolution of council.
if we didn't spend the 415 at all, in the actual, it'd be.
It's not that we didn't budget it, it's that we didn't spend any.
Right.
Okay.
Or if we did spend it, it's in a line item where it was spent.
I'll make it quick. I hate to go back in time, but I did have a question about the head librarian. From 3 years, 4 years, salary went up $24,000. Were those, it was 69 and then it went to, now it's 94?
In 2020-21, we closed the library and we actually laid off our employees. So that's not a full year. That's an actual, right?
So that we don't see their
right,
but their
what was in the budget.
Okay.
And actually at that time we actually had the library director who was a higher salary. Well, and so what we've done is when we came back after the pandemic, we reorganized our library. Now it's a division under the city manager's department. And so we supervise it. We don't have a director there. We have a head librarian that's a cheaper rate than the director.
I thought they were still getting paid maybe and just working.
We actually laid them off.
And we have less people there now and they're thinking. So,
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Good question. That's the general fund. Any other questions? Yeah, 15 minutes. Went over a little, but good questions.
6 p.m.
Yes, 6 p.m. Thursday, May 18th, same place, right here.
Fancy.
And if you have any questions between now and then, feel free to get a hold of Burger Eye and answer.
Well, I don't have any curious.
Half.
45 minutes. You need to.
I told half.
Deceiving.
The meeting is officially adjourned. Oh, very good.